Immortal Cultivation in the Cybernetic Milky Way. This video is purely for entertainment and does not infringe on copyright or laws. The rights to the novel and image belong to the original author. We do not claim ownership. Don't like waiting and want to listen to this fanfic in full now? Subscribe to our Patreon, where you'll find the best fanfics. Chapter 376. The Lu family's great power arrives. In the brightly lit Johnton space station, the entire Zooxia team went out, using the art of escape to advance towards the residence of the congressman who had spoken so arrogantly. On the way, Nanling also assigned a task to Kao. You prepare yourself and admit your mistakes tomorrow. Just say that the poor security of Johnton space station is because we haven't done enough. Fan and I was so happy when she heard it. She said, "You're really bad." Nanling said unhappily, "What else can we do? It's obviously their own bad deeds. It's fine if they let us take the blame, but they actually want to kill us. It's just a blame. It doesn't matter if we take one more blame now." Mo said worriedly, "I know it's necessary to do this, but what if it leads to revenge?" Nanling said, "Don't worry, I put a demon mother's head in the Fanmoling building. If someone really takes revenge, I don't believe they can defeat the demon mother." Fan and I suddenly became nervous. She said, "Demon mother? That's not good. We use her like this. What if she insists on giving birth to a child for us?" This is a good question, and even Nanling became nervous. He was also a little stunned. After all, it is really difficult to meet a demon who wants to give birth to a child at every turn. Nanling thought for a moment and said, "It's okay. Let's do it more quickly this time and don't use the demon mother. If it doesn't work, who will sacrifice?" Mo and Fanna looked at each other first, and then looked at Nanling together. Nanling immediately looked at Mo with wide eyes, and then the two looked at Fanna together. Fanna's eyes widened with anger, and then the three of them exchanged glances and looked at Thongship, who was squatting on the side and had no sense of existence. Thongship was at a loss. What were they doing with these winks? Seeing that Thongship didn't resist, the three of them withdrew their gazes with satisfaction, expressing their satisfaction with his dedication. Fanna suddenly said, "Thongship, I will give you a raise when I go back." Nanling nodded sympathetically. For the first time, he didn't envy others for their raises. But Thongship was still at a loss. He didn't seem to have done anything, so why did his salary suddenly increase? Who made him not have the tacit understanding to interrupt the eye contact between the three people? At this time, they had already come to the residence of the councillor surnamed Lu from a distance. Li Ji's voice rang in their ears. "Okay, this is the last safe position. If we go any further, we will be exposed to the other party's surveillance." The safe passage plan is a small trick that Nanling and Li Ji have worked on together. There are such passages in the entire Star Special Zone that can avoid all surveillance within a time limit. Fanna said cheerfully, "There is no need to hide now. I'm the dignified Flame Demon Lord. There is no need to hide." As soon as she finished speaking, she took a step forward, and then flames swirled around her body. It was a high-level defensive fire spell, Fire Demon Armor. Compared with Nanling's pirated, Fanna's Flame Demon Armor looked more refined, and it was obviously the result of countless adjustments and details. Nanling's pirated seemed much rougher, but the principle was actually the same. Nanling looked at Fanna's spell carefully, and then showed a look of understanding. The next time he uses the Flame Demon Armor, he will perform better and be closer to the original version, but some people feel that it is unnecessary. In this era where everyone is pursuing skills and neglecting laws and not seeking Tao, Nanling's constant pursuit of Tao can naturally make him master all laws. This is a vision that jumps out of the current limitations, looking down from a high position, and many things are naturally clear at a glance. Fanna covered her entire body with flames, making a majestic posture to hide her true body. Then she didn't care about being exposed at all and launched an attack on the councillor's house. All of a sudden, the alarm sounded throughout the night, and Fanna turned into a tyrant of fire, releasing flames that would melt everything around her. At this time, a shield rose at the house of Councillor Lu, and countless defensive weapons attacked to prevent the flame demon tyrant from approaching. However, Fanny was more ferocious than they imagined. She was not like Nanling, who could silently bypass most of the defenses, nor was she like Mo, who could manipulate the magnetic field to turn all of this into her own toys. She only had the ultimate move. The burning concept she had comprehended was brought to the extreme. The raging fire could not be extinguished at all. It kept burning around the circle of shields, causing its energy scale to drop continuously as if it had urinary incontinence. Nanling looked at Fanna, who was raging like a fire evil god not far away, and said to Li Ji in amazement, "Have those guards come?" Li Ji said. No, they didn't come out because the vehicle was neglected and broke down. They said they were repairing the car. These people are really creative, using this excuse to delay their work. Mo said lightly. This guard team is controlled by the Ajit family. They have suffered losses from us before, and of course they will not interfere in the conflict between us and the Lu family this time. Besides, even if they want to interfere, it doesn't matter. I will guard the periphery and no one can get close. These words were said in a grand manner, but Nanling has gradually understood the confidence of the electromagnetic controllers in this era. Buzz, an unstable energy shock appeared on the energy shield of Councillor Lu's house. This was a sign that the shield had reached its limit and was about to fail. Yes, even if this was a starship-level shield, it could not reach the level of a battleship. It might not even be as powerful as the transformation of pure color faith by Nanling. Boom. The next moment, the shield was broken. The surging flames lit Councillor Lu's house like a hellish monster, and instantly melted its surface into molten iron. Fanny is so fierce. She said it was an assassination, but she directly razed it to the ground. However, at this moment, the spiritual power in the air suddenly began to gather abnormally. It seemed that there was a strong will that gathered all these spiritual powers together, and then formed a human-like outline. If it was before, everyone would be scared when seeing this scene. But now they have deeply studied the technology of long-distance consciousness transmission. Isn't this scene a manifestation of the advent of consciousness transmission? Although this scene is no longer mysterious, there is no doubt that those who can use this method are all big bosses behind the scenes. In other words, the masters of the Lu family are going to intervene. Prepared for the three-element attack. Nanling gave the order secretly. He was not accommodating at all. Even if a powerful person came, it would be a good opportunity to test their combined skills. Simo's Ling Yu, Nanling's long Xiangwen gun, and Fanny's jewelry all quietly floated into the air. There was no movement of spiritual power gathering in these three spiritual treasures, because they had already gathered and were just waiting to attack. At this time, the phantom of the spiritual energy gathered quickly took shape, and in the process it actually released a strong wind pressure, extinguishing all the flames below. Then a voice came out. Who is so bold? The voice stopped abruptly, because a powerful spiritual power attack with three colors entangled had directly pierced the phantom. It was so straightforward, and Nanling, who no longer had awe for such an existence, was too lazy to listen to any more nonsense. Chapter 377 Safe House. The person who had that thought here should be a great cultivator of the nascent soul level, right? Nanling, Mo, and Fan and I, who was setting the fire, had this thought at the same time. However, just now, based on the principle of striking first, they used the strongest 3 yuan's 1 strike to disperse the opponent as soon as he appeared. It's great, we're killing the nascent soul, right? Fan and I cheered loudly in the small group of 3 people Fan all in. Nanling said helplessly. Don't just focus on the fun, we just killed a nascent soul's descending consciousness, now we're completely enemies, should we retreat? Fan and I is not the kind of stubborn girl, she thought it made sense as soon as she heard it. Although she is usually very reckless, she will never say a word when she should be cowardly. She quickly spit out a large mouthful of fire to set the entire Lu family councillor's house on fire, and then quietly retreated to meet Nanling and Mo. Retreat, retreat, don't be caught off guard by someone who kills you back. At this moment, she was very well behaved. Nanling said repeatedly, activate the emergency plan. Don't go back to the Fanmoling building yet. Go to the nearest safe house. As soon as he finished speaking, Li Ji projected the location of the nearby safe houses in front of them. Nanling chose one on the spot and said, this is it. Calculate the shortest path and we will escape there. Mo's eyes were wide open. She said, which emergency plan have you used? She paused and said, how much did it cost this time? Nanling said, don't worry, Sister Mo, it didn't cost anything. Let's get there first, and then talk about other things. Then she went ahead and escaped with the wind. Seeing this, Mo could only follow that thunder escape, while Fanny and Thongshit followed one after the other and escaped with the fire escape. Well, Thongshit followed anyway, because he was afraid that if he didn't follow closely, he would be forgotten. Everyone escaped all the way and soon arrived at the nearest safe house. The location of this safe house was very tricky, it was actually in the branch of the guard team. This guard branch is a building that occupies a large area. In fact, the office space is very small, less than 1/10 of it, and most of it is used to store and repair guard robots. And in these spaces, there is a very hidden compartment. This compartment is mainly hidden, and through the clever layout of the building, it takes up about 100 square meters of space. This 100 square meters extends along the robot maintenance room at the guard branch. There is only one independent space of 30 square meters and 18 square meters. The rest are actually narrow passages. This is also to prevent the living people at the guard team from noticing the abnormality. As for the robots of the guard team, sorry, the program loopholes have long been revealed by Leegi. They only need Leegi's idea to become the most loyal lackers. When Fanny and Mo came to this safe house, they couldn't help frowning, because it was really too narrow. They had never lived in such a narrow space since they were young. But fortunately, it was cleaned very cleanly, and all the facilities and materials were complete, which made them unbearable. Mo was not impatient at all. He looked at the room curiously and suddenly asked, "How did you think of setting up a safe house here?" Nanling said, "Because the main building of the guard team has a device to isolate the divine thoughts. This is to prevent some unruly practitioners from making trouble. Plus, the officers of the guard team are too lazy to move, and all the daily life is maintained by the intelligence system, so this is simply the best place for a safe house. In fact, don't look at the small place here. We can go to the workshop outside to hang out at any time. With Sister Leegi's protection, those people can't find us at all." Fanny was stunned for a moment and said, "Then who has the final say in this guard team?" Nanling said, "Normal listening to them, casual when necessary. This casual is too essential, which means that the entire guard team has been diluted and has become an object that Nanling can manipulate at will." Fanny walked out carelessly at the time. She couldn't stand this narrow space. Fortunately, Leegi was there to protect her. As long as she didn't get under the eyes of the guard officers, even if she was eating sunflower seeds in the workshop, the guard robot would have to follow her and sweep the floor. Mo saw her go out, but surprisingly didn't follow her out. Instead, she sat down in this narrow room and asked gently, "Did you decorate this place yourself?" Nanling nodded. Mo also nodded and said, "I knew it." She could feel a familiar sense of warmth here. Every decoration here was in line with Nanling's aesthetics, so she didn't feel cramped. Even when she sat down here, her thoughts suddenly went off in an unknown direction, and she asked, "If we are all ordinary people, living in such a narrow but warm house, it seems to be a very interesting thing." Nanling was stunned for a moment, and continued with her words, "Maybe we will have a child." Mo's face was ruddy, obviously touched by these words. Then she seemed to think of many interesting scenes, and couldn't help but smile. She next to her felt that she should have gone out for a walk with the eldest lady just now. It always felt very annoying here. "Sure enough," Nanling said, "after hearing what you said, I'm looking forward to the day when we can really live that kind of life." Of course, he would never spoil the fun at this time. If they were really ordinary people, it would mean that they would have to work hard for food, clothing, housing and transportation, and having a child would be even more troublesome, and they would have to worry about whether the kid would be able to succeed. "I don't want to think about it anymore, it hurts my liver when I think about it. Life is the most painful game." But when he looked at Mo, who was so yearning and imagining, his heart was touched again. He didn't expect that Mo actually yearned for the life of an ordinary woman in her heart, but because of her birth and her feelings for Fan and I, she kept doing what she should do. Thinking of this, Nanling felt a little distressed for his wife. Especially since they were already legally married, but they still had to consider Fan and I's mood and take her into consideration in everything. This kind of triangle relationship is really messy. Fortunately, Nanling didn't care about these things. He felt that he could feel Mo's feelings and respond. So he said, "Once we have mastered the technology of consciousness transmission, we can find a place to settle down, and then use consciousness to accompany Fanny on adventures." Mo said, "Fanny is too pitiful, isn't she?" Nanling thought about it and it was right. Then he said, "Then we can make a new body, and then use consciousness to live in the body as we want, and the original body remains the same." Mo laughed dumbly. "You guy, this is not how consciousness transmission technology is used." Nanling immediately asked back, "Then how else can it be used? It can't be that once this technology is in our hands, we can only do the same as those guys to show off in front of others, right?" Mo didn't know what to say to him. Is it a serious matter for him to secretly talk about love like this? It must be said that this technology has gone astray before it was put into practice. Chapter 378 Weighing and Compromising. They did a lot of damage to Yuning Daxiu, but nothing happened. The four of them waited in the safe house for a long time, but nothing happened. The entire space station was peaceful, as if nothing had happened. Nanling couldn't help but ask, "Is there any news?" Li Ji has been concerned about the situation outside. She said. Nothing happened. Those people seem to have collective amnesia about this. There is nothing abnormal in our Fanmoling building. If you need, I can monitor their communications and maybe find something. Nanling shook his head and said, don't take risks, and don't underestimate them. Since these big families can last for such a long time and allow a digital life to control the network of the Star Special Zone for such a long time, they must have countermeasures. Li Ji has been used to calling the shots recently, and couldn't help but mutter, I think they're stupid. If they really have that kind of means, how could they let Sci-Pin cause such great damage? In fact, Sci-Pin didn't cause much damage. The biggest damage was caused by Nanling's poisoning. Nanling said unhappily, you can't do that. Only if we do things steadily can we truly be invincible. We must not do anything risky just for the sake of convenience. Nanling taught Li Ji his rigorousness. Li Ji kept saying yes, 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 imitating Nanling's way of dealing with Mo vividly. Mo couldn't help laughing when she heard it, and always felt that everyone around her was inexplicably Nan-like. Nanling talked a lot, and Fanny, who had gone out for a walk, came back. Seeing this, she suddenly said, Xiaonan, why are you as long-winded as Mo now? Good guy, worthy at being the boss of Fanny. Just one sentence made Mo and Nanlin, the couple, raise their eyebrows at the same time. Nanling immediately shifted his focus to Fan and I and said, Boss, what you said is wrong. I'm worried that Sister Li Ji will let down her guard. How can this be called nagging? Mo said, okay, you finally spoke your mind. You always think I'm nagging, right? Fan and I's head was instantly doubled. She forgot herself and committed a big taboo. She was immediately subjected to the mixed doubles of the couple, which made her miserable. She raised her hands in surrender and said, I'll listen to you, everything you say, let me go. Nanling then stopped talking and changed the subject, saying, how is the replenishment of supplies going? Li Ji also secretly breathed a sigh of relief and said, the supplies are in place and are being loaded on the ship now. It is expected to be ready in 2 days. Nanling nodded after hearing this. He also knew the situation on the Zhuoxia. It was a bit crowded, but there was nothing he could do. He said, make sure the Zhuoxia can take off at any time. As for the matter here, we will know the specific situation after the results of the parliamentary vote come out in 2 days. Mo also agreed, indeed, if the Lu family wants to settle the matter peacefully, then the result of this vote will naturally satisfy us. However, at this moment, Li Ji suddenly said, Yan went to the Fanmoling building. He looked panicked and seemed to be begging for mercy. Nanling asked, who is Yan? Li Ji said, he is the other congressman who targeted us before. I thought you would kill him first and then cause trouble for the Lu family. Nanling was speechless when he heard this and said, it seems that this person is just an ordinary small family behind him. How can he have the courage to go against us? Li Ji said, I guess he was promised some benefits. Nanling said, forget it, let Cat go to receive him. As long as he is willing to cooperate with our work, there is no need to make things difficult for him. What we care most about now is the attitude of the Lu family. Mo said thoughtfully, perhaps this person's current behavior has already shown the attitude of the Lu family. These people always have more sources of information than us. He should know that the Lu family is going to settle the matter peacefully. Nanling agreed with him and said, that's right. In fact, according to the Lu family's own style of doing things, I also judge that they will choose to settle the matter peacefully. After all, they are willing to sacrifice a fleet of their own in order to achieve their own goals. But we must always be cautious in everything. What if the other party does something beyond our expectations? Then it will be too late to regret. To be honest, Nanling really wanted to put on a feather fan and a scarf, and then say with certainty, those cowardly rats will definitely not dare to be enemies with us again. What kind of style is this? But the problem is that for him, it is better to be rigorous in everything and seek stability instead of pretending to be powerful in his heart. It would be embarrassing if he failed to pretend to be powerful and got slapped in the face. Facts have proved that Nanling's caution this time was unnecessary, because the Lu family really endured this breath. Nanling and his team stayed in a safe house until the next day. The Lu family councillor who was lucky enough not to be buried in the sea of fire held an emergency meeting and overturned the voting proposal he had previously proposed. The work of the parliament is just a joke, anything can be overturned at any time. No wonder the councillor Yang came to beg for mercy so anxiously. The Lu family was ready to give in. If a councillor from such a small family didn't beg for mercy, he would be asking for death. Nanling saw this and said, "Okay, we can go back to Fanolin now, but let's start packing up after we go back, and we will set sail again as soon as possible." Everyone was surprised. Fan and I said, "Our consciousness transmission device has not been made yet." Nanling said, "There's no rush for that. Let's stay on the Zhuoxia first. If we stay in this space station, no matter how many contingency plans we have, it will not be as safe as the Zhuoxia. And all my contingency plans for the worst case scenario, the ultimate goal is to return to the Zhuoxia and then transfer quickly." Poseidon said, "You are too cautious. But your concerns this time are right. The Lu family should only make temporary concessions. They and even other clans are not sure how much high-end strength we have, so they dare not act rashly, but various tests are probably inevitable. Our collective departure is a sign of weakness, but it is also a deterrent. Leaving means that we will not be more involved in the interests, and it also means that we can retaliate against any family at any time. In this way, they can naturally weigh the pros and cons and no longer make things difficult for our industries left in the Fanxing Special Zone. They are the group of people who are best at compromise. When they find that the disadvantages of something are greater than the benefits to themselves, they will naturally not do it, and they will even prevent others from doing it. When Fan Moline really showed that he could at least challenge the Immortal Cultivator, the next thing would probably be the trade-offs and compromises of all parties. Nanling nodded and said, "That's right, but the ability of consciousness transmission must be acquired as soon as possible, so that you can use it to bluff people like those Immortal Cultivators." Everyone felt that this consciousness transmission technology had never been normal in Nanling's hands. Originally, it was used by those great ones or upper-level bosses to deal with the problem of being unable to split themselves, but now it is used by Nanling to talk about love or blood people. Chapter 379, The Irresistible Boss. This chapter has a bug again. I will ask the editor to adjust it tomorrow. The group boarded the Zhuoxia as soon as they left the safe house, and even asked Liji to use her authority to erase all traces of everyone. Although this is taboo, as long as they return to the Zhuoxia, it is a victory, and this is all a small matter. When they got on the ship, even Fanny was in a trance, with a long-lost sense of familiarity. But he complained to Nanling, "You are too nervous, your nervous look makes us all nervous." Nanling was not annoyed, just said, "It is better to be prepared. If we are really blocked in the space station, it will be too late to say anything." Fanny couldn't wait to sit on the captain's throne, and asked casually, "Okay, now tell me where we should dock." After all, the consciousness transmission technology has not been fully mastered. It's not a good idea to completely leave the Federal Starfield now, right? Nanling has already thrown out 2 plans and said, "We can stay on the several food raw material planets received from Food First, but that can't guarantee safety. And from the perspective of safety, we should go to the Ghost Fortress." Fanna said with a dark face, "I think we shouldn't go to the Ghost Fortress for safety." She obviously still remembered what happened when she encountered the Demon Mother before, which almost killed her. Nanling originally wanted to say that it was the Demon Mother's sphere of influence, and ordinary Ying would probably be more cautious and not willing to disturb it. However, seeing Fanny's resistance, he could only say, "Okay, let's go to the food raw material planet and treat it as an inspection." Zhuoxia set the direction and left the port immediately. Originally, there was a long approval process, but this process ended at the speed of light here at Liji. After marking the course, it directly entered the hyperspace flight. This journey was trouble-free. I don't know when it started, Nanling always felt unsafe about hyperspace navigation. This is a very safe mode of transportation for others, but it is always full of dangerous possibilities for him, as if a fleet will suddenly appear at any time. This situation made Nanling no longer like the current mode of transportation. But he didn't say it at this time. Mu Yuan Star, this is a large ranch dedicated to raising meat-producing animals such as cattle and sheep. The entire planet is almost flat grassland, and the weather control system makes the grassland here lush and full of cattle and sheep. There is actually nothing to visit on such a planet. The scenery is indeed very open and magnificent, but in fact, it will feel the same after seeing it too much. And because there are many cattle and sheep, there is always some smell of cattle and sheep dung on the grassland. Fanny took Mo to walk around for a while and then returned to the outer space. Zhuoxia docked at the small space station used for cargo transportation for modification and final supply. Nanling felt that the current strength of Zhuoxia was not enough. He increased the original 100,000 degree shield of Zhuoxia by 50% to 150,000 degrees. Then he felt that it was not enough, so he simply designed a set of large fragmentation-style armor for Zhuoxia. He put another set of armor on the entire Zhuoxia, making it look bloated. These armor plates are very thick but also very practical. Each piece can withstand a battleship-level main gun bombardment. In other words, even if the shield of Zhuoxia is broken, as long as it is not hit in the same place continuously, Zhuoxia can still withstand several more hits. Fanny and Mo saw this scene when they returned to the space station from Lanmuyuanxing and complained about it. But what made her feel tired and unhappy was that after Nanling installed the last piece of armor and made some adjustments, the Zhuoxia looked like it had been completely remodeled into an old-fashioned battleship of the Kyoshua class. The Kyoshua class is an extremely classic main battleship. It began to serve in the Edo about 800 years ago. Until the design drawings were made public more than 300 years ago, it became a classic style that small and medium-sized forces in the human starfield pursued. Even now, there are still some remote forces or caravan guards who have this Kyoshua-class battleship in service. It's just because the design of this battleship is too classic, with a very advanced battleship frame keel design, which can be modified for many special purposes, so it has a very long life. Even now, many large merchant ships are transformed from the framework of the Kyoshua class, which can be said to be a classic case of military to civilian. Of course, the current Zhuoxia is disguised as the Kyoshua class, which is a consideration that goes against the grain. According to Nanling's idea, he would even let Li Ji completely change and disguise the registration information of Zhuoxia, so that it would be an ordinary Kyoshua class merchant ship in the database of outsiders. In this way, whether it is a disguised identity or a deception, it must be excellent. After all, who could have imagined that someone would do such a coquettish operation as converting a hunting ship into an Kyoshua class? Anyway, Fanna could only be stunned and shouted 6 beside her. During this modification process, the Seeker suddenly found Nanling again. He said, "Nanling, I have a commission here that I want you and your team to do." Nanling was excited when he heard this, knowing that this was another opportunity to get closer to the boss. So he said, "Please tell us, sir. We will do our best." The Seeker of Knowledge said, "No need to be so formal. Actually, there is no need to force it. I just heard that there are also groups of nether locusts wreaking havoc in the Wind Territory, so I want to see what's going on. But as you know, I am currently exploring the border of the Milky Way and have no time to come back to deal with this matter, so I would like to ask you to help me take a look." Nanling! Exclamation mark, exclamation mark, exclamation mark. He was shocked when he heard this. There are nether locusts wreaking havoc in the Wind Territory. Why does it sound so familiar to him? Nanling heard this and said, "We will do it, but it will be more time-consuming. After all, it will take at least 10 months to get from the Federation to the Wind Territory." The Seeker of Knowledge said, "Don't worry. I have a design drawing of a hyperspace engine here. If you take it and build this engine according to the drawing, you can shorten the time by at least half." Nanling exclaimed in his heart, "Big Brother is awesome. This kind of cross-era stuff is really easy to come up with." However, before he could finish his exclamation, the Seeker sent a bunch of information and said, "This is all the information about remote consciousness transmission technology. You should study it carefully and at least install a receiving device on the ship. When you find that traces of the group of locusts or something happens, I can also locate and descend directly." Nanling read the information quickly, and exclaimed in his heart. What the Seeker gave this time was simply a fool's tutorial on remote consciousness transmission technology. All the difficulties of this technology were explained one by one, which was much more detailed and attentive than the information given by the Demon Mother. Nanling was now very motivated to work for the Seeker. After all, this boss gave him rewards first, and the rewards were irresistible. Chapter 380 Hyperspace Drive. Fanny was still worried about the next trip of Zhuoxia. She really didn't have any good goals. But the next moment Nanling told her not to worry. The goal of the next round of exploration was already here. To fight back to the Wind region. When everyone saw the 2 pieces of information sent by the Seeker, they were all excited. Not to mention how epoch-making the hyperspace engine was, the consciousness transmission technology alone had saved them several months of hard work. It can be said that he taught them how to use this technology directly, and even helped them to understand this technology thoroughly. The Seeker's generosity was exciting, and everyone got busy. The modification of the hyperspace engine was added to the work column of modifying Zhuoxia. This is very important, because all the hyperspace engines on the market are basically the same in performance parameters. Even if the original ones on Zhuoxia are more advanced, they can only increase the speed by about 10%. Because the travel speed in hyperspace is not just a matter of the amount of energy supply, but also of deep exploration and application of gravity technology. And the hyperspace engine given by the Seeker obviously surpassed this era. Its hyperspace travel speed is indeed doubled, but there is another more important thing. Its energy consumption is also less. In other words, the original spacecraft had to stop and rest after flying in March before setting off again, but with the help of this hyperspace engine, it is completely unnecessary to rest. The journey that originally might take a year to reach by flying and stopping now only takes more than 4 months, which is indeed more than twice as fast as before. Nanling smiled, and he felt more secure about hyperspace navigation. After all, after installing such an engine, he didn't have to worry about others ambushing them. Because hyperspace is a very special field, it is a distorted space arc attached to ordinary space formed by gravity distorting real space. Different hyperspace navigation speeds actually mean different distorted arcs, which are completely not on the same spatial level, so the two sides naturally cannot touch each other. For his own sense of security, Nanling worked hard to study the hyperspace engine technology. Fortunately, if the Seekers of Knowledge had free time during this period, they would connect and give some instructions. Finally, the people on the Zhuoxia spent 40 days to rub out the first hyperspace engine by hand. When the hyperspace engine passed the self-test and was proven to be fully qualified, Nanling was filled with a sense of accomplishment. With this experience, he could now build a starship even if he was alone in the void. In particular, he found that this new hyperspace engine had another advantage over all the previous models, that is, it could enter hyperspace navigation by itself, without the need to borrow the gravity of large celestial bodies or its own mass being large enough. After knowing this, Nanling almost wanted to install such a hyperspace engine on his pure faith. Ormo persuaded him earnestly, and explained that unless the navigation system of the entire starship was moved to pure faith, otherwise such a modification would only make pure faith lost in hyperspace. Nanling gave up in disappointment. After a month of rest, Zhuoxia was completely ready and could set sail again at any time. Should we go to the Fanlim building and say goodbye to the people there? Fanna suddenly hesitated. She thought of Yi Fei, who she raised like a pet, and Lingu, the daughter of the demon mother, who she raised as a pet. She even thought of Cao, who she treated like a cow and a horse, and she was reluctant to leave. Nanling thought it was too troublesome to go back and say goodbye at this time, so she simply suggested, "Why don't we project over there with the consciousness transmission device, and we shouldn't even say goodbye, and create an illusion that we have always been there." Fanny was excited when she heard this. She said, "This is good. I want to see when that idiot Yi Fei will find out that something is wrong." She laughed and went to play with people. Nanling quickly followed and tested the new equipment. The consciousness transmission alone is actually similar to the ghost state. Nanling prepared a set of optical camouflage for Fanny, making her look like a real person. This fooled many people, and even Cao, who had practiced cultivation before, did not find anything unusual. Nanling, on the other hand, noticed something unusual at the second glance when he saw Tai Long. Tai Long said in surprise, "This is a consciousness projection, are you going to leave?" Nanling was not surprised that he could see through it, after all, he was well informed. He said, "I took a job from the Seeker of Knowledge, so I have to leave. Besides, given the current situation here, it would be better for us to leave than to stay." Tai Long was not too surprised, he just said, "Madam asked me to follow you, it seems that you don't need my help." Nanling's consciousness projection patted his shoulder, and Tai Long was surprised to feel the touch of the real object. Only then did Nanling say, "Practice well, my mother asked you to follow me because she wanted you to have a chance to practice for a while, but your foundation building cultivation is a little behind." Tai Long said with a gloomy look, "I know, when you and Madam explored the Antarctic Changsheng and I could only wait outside, I knew that I was actually a little behind." He was very calm, but this situation was also helpless. Nanling did teach Tai Long his own understanding of cultivation during this process, but Tai Long still failed to make a breakthrough. From this, Nanling realized that he had overlooked one thing. That is, the way of cultivation is only suitable for a small number of people. In this era, most people can raise their starting point to the 8th level of foundation building, which is a very remarkable thing. Perhaps what he called the right way of cultivation is a privilege for a few people. Nanling patted Tai Long's shoulder again and asked with some melancholy, "In this case, brother, you can stay here with peace of mind. At least I can give you a peaceful and quiet environment." Tai Long shook his head and said, "No, if I still can't break through, I plan to return to the giant spirit Iron Fist Dodger to be an ordinary martial arts teacher in a while. Nanling heard the words in his heart, but on the surface he said with an expression of agreement. Sometimes returning to the old place to seek tranquility can help you adjust your state of mind. No matter what choice you make, I support you. Tai Long said gratefully. Thank you, I thought you would force me to stay. Nanling smiled and shook his head without saying anything. After all, this guy was always in Fan Ling's business, so it didn't matter where he was. So Nanling said his final farewell to the Star Federation. As for the Demon Mother, that was another matter. Such a powerful being didn't need to say goodbye. He had plenty of ways to find him directly. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Fanfic Novel, as there you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 381 Hyperspace is a bit boring. The Fuchsia was about to set sail again. This time, after a long rest, even Nanling was looking forward to the new journey. Target wind domain, Dust Air Joe 6, let's go. The Fuchsia slowly drove out of the space station of Lanmu Yuan Star, and then suddenly entered the hyperspace. Unlike the strong shock caused by entering the hyperspace in the past, this time they changed the new hyperspace engine, and they entered the hyperspace very smoothly. But at that moment, Nanling felt dizzy and countless distorted information poured into his senses, almost ruining his brain again. He realized one thing, that is, this faster hyperspace flight also means a more terrible amount of distorted information. Nanling quickly closed his eyes and tried to calm his discomfort, and finally he recovered. Then he didn't dare to explore the surrounding hyperspace with his own consciousness, so he could only shrink in the consciousness space and then devote himself to the internet. Boss, what are you going to play this time? He habitually spoke in the hyperspace active group, waiting for the boss to invite him to play games. But in the end, there was no response. Mo? He asked again, but there was no response. Nanling was stunned for a long time, realizing that he was the only one awake under the current hyperspace engine. At this time, he felt someone touching his head, and he asked quickly, Sister Liji, is it you? Liji replied, It's me, I didn't expect that they were all asleep. Nanling breathed a sigh of relief, but still said helplessly, I didn't expect that the higher level hyperspace journey would be like this. Except for me and Sister Liji, no one else can wake up. Liji said, Even I can't stay awake for too long, because the various distorted scenes in this hyperspace have a great impact on me. I will also enter a dormant state in a while. Nanling understood that it was the complex distortion in the hyperspace that affected Liji. Although Liji did not have the sensory organs of a normal person, she was intelligent after all, not a rigid AI. She should have been disturbed by some scenes in the hyperspace. If Nanling could read the chaotic information in the hyperspace at this stage, he would probably be able to immediately create an information bomb to blow up any processor he saw. Nanling said, I see. You go to sleep. I'll see if there's anything I can do. He did think of something, which was the ultra-long-distance consciousness transmitter that the Seeker had built for him. So he tried to get Liji to help him put on the consciousness transmitter, and then connect his consciousness to it. It was safe on the ship, but if everyone went to sleep, it would be too boring for him. As for whether consciousness could be projected during hyperspace navigation, he didn't have to worry about that. The products of the Seeker must be top-notch. So while the main body was traveling in hyperspace, Nanling's consciousness instantly crossed a long distance and came to the caster's laboratory. The experiments here have been suspended. It is said that they will be adjusted, but it is not known when the adjustment will be made. When Nanling's consciousness descended, everyone here was still busy, and it seemed that they did not have time to rest because of the suspension of the experiment. He drifted all the way and came to the mental armor where he was sitting. At this time, his mental armor was covered with a layer of dust-proof film, and there were wires all over his body connected to the instruments next to him. Nanling didn't care about these things, and entered the body without notifying anyone. The next moment, the researcher next to him exclaimed. The cell activity index began to soar, and the cells showed signs of partial quantization. What's going on? The mind-armed consciousness awakened. Is Mr. Nanling back? Everyone in the laboratory was quite surprised. They didn't expect Nanling to come during non-experimental hours. Nanling raised his head and nodded slightly to everyone, saying, It shouldn't be taboo to come and take a look, right? At this time, Jiebu, who had hurried over from outside after getting the news, said happily, We are so happy that Mr. Nan is here, how can it be taboo? But we still have to keep these detectors on Mr. Nan. This is our instrument to detect the degree of quantization of mental ant cells. It belongs to long-term monitoring and cannot be stopped. Nanling nodded slightly to show that he understood, and then sat there cooperatively without moving, and chatted with Jiabu. My real body is traveling in hyperspace, and you also know how boring hyperspace travel is, so I came here to chat with you. Jiabu was quite happy to hear that, and talked to Nanling about the history of their laboratory. Mr. Nan, you don't know that our Forge's laboratory is located on the edge of the wisdom domain, in the gravitational balance zone of 2 neutron stars. Mr. Nan, where is your real body? Nanling said indifferently. My real body is in the Star Federation. Jiao said. Then Mr. Nan is about 20,000 light-years away from us, which is really far away. Nanling was also secretly shocked when he heard this distance. Even if he replaced the new hyperspace engine, it would take him 10 years to fly over there, which is almost across the entire Milky Way. He said, "It's so far away, I just don't know what's so special about the wisdom domain over there." At such a long distance, in fact, merchants rarely come and go. After all, who is willing to run back and forth for 20 years to do business? No, the voyage time of an ordinary spacecraft would have to be more than doubled. I'm afraid it would take at least 50 years to come back and forth. What a terrible time span this is, not to mention the various problems that may arise during the voyage under such a long time span. Therefore, Nanling had only heard about UU, and knew that it was a very large human star domain, whose geographical scope might be larger than that of Guinfenu, and it had very advanced technology. The rest was mostly hearsay. After all, the information about UU was not of concern to the people at the Star Federation or Guinfenu, so naturally there was very little relevant information. Jiao then talked to Nanling about the customs and habits of his hometown. Nanling gradually had a clear understanding of UU after listening to it. This UU was indeed a place that could produce such a powerful person as the caster. The overall technological level should be 50 to 100 years higher than that of the Star Federation. It was absolutely strong in the field of technology. In contrast, it was quite backward in the field of cultivation, or no one cared much about the path of cultivation. The path of cultivation here could only be regarded as a niche choice. In the eyes of most people in UU, it was a stupid choice that was not proportional to the effort and reward. The specialty of UU should be digital life. In UU, there are many digital life that successfully upload consciousness every year, and they are not as secretive as other places. In Wisdom Realm, becoming a digital life means a leap in social class, and one can directly become a first-class citizen. So people like Jiao were very much looking forward to becoming a digital life. If he was not so sure about uploading consciousness, he would have tried it long ago. Nanling listened to this with great interest. This was a completely different customs and practices. So in the following days, he would come to chat with Jiao every day, and would also be invited by Jiao to enjoy some unique movies, TV series, music and the like in Wisdom Realm, which was quite leisurely. Of course, he could not stay for a long time. His out-of-body consciousness could only stay in the laboratory for a maximum of 18 hours, and after that he had to return to his body to rest. However, after a period of time, he did not expect that the seeker of knowledge would come to their laboratory with great interest. Chapter 382 The Greatness of the Great. Nanling really didn't expect the seeker to come so suddenly. He thought that this gentleman would be very busy recently. When the seeker arrived here, he greeted Nanling and then said to Jiabu, "Where is the abnormal data? Let me see." Jiabu quickly called up the data record to show the seeker. Nanling then realized that this big guy was summoned by Jiabu. It seems that this guy is a loyal and honest person on the surface, but he also has some tricks behind the scenes. But Nanling didn't care about this. He was also very curious about what the abnormal data they were talking about was. Seeing his curiosity, Jiao said a little embarrassedly, "We detected that every time Mr. Nan's consciousness descended, it would cause abnormal quantum fluctuations in the cells of the mind and body, so we paid more attention to collecting data during this period. Then we found that, in general, when Mr. Nan's consciousness left, the quantum activity of the mind and cells would decrease rapidly, and eventually enter a state similar to dormancy. And once Mr. Nan's consciousness descended, the quantum activity of these cells would increase by leaps and bounds, and would fluctuate with Mr. Nan's mood." Nanling heard this and said unhappily, "So you usually play with me to collect experimental data?" Jiao apologized and said, "I'm sorry, Mr. Nan, but I have already explained that I want to collect data by the way." Nanling heard this and it was hard to blame this guy. After all, Jiao really said everything in advance, and it was his own negligence. At least compared to Tulu, Jia's working method is indeed reassuring. Nanling hesitated for a moment, then asked, "Is there any research value in this kind of fluctuation?" Jia nodded and said, "Yes, we found that as your emotions fluctuate, when you are more focused or more emotional, the quantum activity of the mind armament will be greater, and there is a tendency to promote the quantum degree of cells." The shadow of the seeker of knowledge has been nailed in front of the data. He said motionlessly, "This is very meaningful for reference. This body is the most quantum active body I have seen in 2000 years. I hope that the quantum transformation can be successfully completed." Nanling understood what the seekers of knowledge or the big guys expected after hearing this. To obtain a completely quantumized mind armament and obtain quantum cell samples. If they can obtain quantum cell samples, then they may be able to create a quantum body for themselves. And there is no need to say what kind of changes a quantum body can bring. Becoming a quantum life will be a qualitative leap in the form of life. Even the current long distance will no longer be a problem. A distance of tens of thousands of light years can be easily crossed with just one quantum resonance. Even the galaxy outside the Milky Way can be explored, and humans can truly walk out of this closed galaxy. Nanling was also extremely excited. He knew that perhaps a path for humanity lay in this body of his, but he didn't know when he would be able to get out of it. The seeker of knowledge looked at it for a while, then looked at Nanling and said, "I'll leave this matter to you. I'm sorry, I have a lot of things to ask you recently. If you're really too busy, you can put the matter in Fenhu aside for now." Nanling shook his head and said, "It doesn't matter. I'm on the way anyway. I have time. Besides, don't forget that I have a team. I can ask my team to help me." The seeker of knowledge nodded appreciatively and said, "That's right. Actually, you just need to do your own thing. After all, whether you are creating a new world on the path of cultivation or evolving your spiritual weapon to the end, it is a very valuable thing for us." He paused, then said with some emotion, "It's incredible. When I think about it this way, I realize that I have placed so many expectations on you." The seeker of knowledge sighed with emotion and said, "Your matter is very important. This spiritual weapon belongs to you. I just hope you can cooperate with our research. In addition, the research plan may have to be accelerated. You must be mentally prepared." As soon as he finished speaking, he disappeared. Nanling was a little surprised, especially the last sentence, "The plan may need to be accelerated." This information made him quite concerned. What kind of plan is it? In another hidden corner, this is a very empty and huge space. The black shadow of the seeker of knowledge appeared in this space with a great background light, which was very conspicuous. At this moment, another figure appeared beside him. It was an extremely huge mechanical body, bloated and tall, full of the breath of hot melt radiation. "This is the caster. Seeker of knowledge." He nodded to the seeker of knowledge. The seeker of knowledge also nodded and said, "You are here." He used the word "you." The next moment, a colorful and brilliant light spot appeared in the power furnace on the caster's chest, and then the light spot formed a human shape. The human-shaped light spot also nodded to the seeker of knowledge. "This is the beauty seeker." After the beauty seeker came the demon mother. In the dark space, a spore floated, and then it quickly grew into a huge tumor. Then the ugly tumor opened in the middle, revealing a half-body beauty. The beauty seeker moved away in disgust. For him, this way of appearance was too ugly, and the demon mother herself was too ugly. The demon mother felt the beauty seeker's disdain and looked indifferent. He had no interest in the caster and the beauty seeker, and he had no interest in the existence of abandoning the flesh. His current interest was whether he could have a child with the mind armor. When the demon mother appeared, the next moment a figure sitting on a chair suspended in the air appeared in the venue. The seeker of knowledge said, "Since the book collector is here, this impromptu meeting can begin." The caster said calmly, "Tell us your purpose, seeker of knowledge. You know how heavy our work is right now, and many projects are ongoing." The seeker of knowledge said, "I suggest that we start the Heaven Devouring project ahead of time." Upon hearing this, the caster said decisively, "No, my hometown and I are not ready yet. If we rashly start the Heaven Devouring project, the situation will only get out of control." The beauty seeker said nothing, but agreed with his partner's words. Even the demon mother echoed, "Once the Heaven Devouring project is launched, the entire wisdom realm will be turned into scorched earth. This is a desperate attempt when we cannot break the deadlock." The book collector knocked on the armrest of his chair and said gently, "Seeker of knowledge, tell us your ideas, and don't let us waste our time on meaningless speculation." The seeker of knowledge said helplessly, "You are still so boring. Okay, take a look at this experimental data. All 5 great men fell silent. The book collector suddenly said, "Does the heaven devouring project have to go this far?" The caster paused and said, "Then let's have a little heaven devouring. I'm ready to sacrifice my experimental base. If it's well controlled, it may reduce the impact." The book collector asked again, "What about the wisdom realm?" The caster said, "The wisdom realm cannot be avoided. Their composition is too fragile for the heaven devouring, but the humans in other areas should have a buffer time." The seeker of knowledge still asked calmly, "Then when do we start?" The seeker of knowledge, who seemed scholarly and intellectual in front of Nan Lin, seemed extremely cold at this moment. The caster said, "It has already begun. It only takes a small variable to trigger it." The caster was also cold. His body was burning, but his heart was already cold. Chapter 383 Mutation occurs. Nan Ling's consciousness was sleeping in the main body, but he suddenly received an urgent message from the outside. He was very surprised. It was difficult to receive external messages during hyperspace flight, let alone at his current speed. "Mr. Nan, help." Nan Ling was very surprised. This was actually a distress signal from Jiabu. What happened to the base of the forger? Without much hesitation, he immediately transmitted his consciousness. After the black hole of consciousness, he appeared in a familiar metal room. But then he frowned because he found a corpse with half of its body smashed in this metal room. Nan Ling immediately determined that there was an accident in this laboratory. He was about to go out, but he didn't expect that the door of this room was tightly closed, and his consciousness couldn't go out at all. This is a room that can block consciousness. Normally, the AI system here will naturally open the door for him, but now the AI system here seems to have a problem. Nan Ling hesitated, and then immediately penetrated the lock core of this door with his own powerful divine consciousness, and then pushed the lock core from the inside to force it to unlock. Click, the lock core turned, and the alloy door was opened. Nan Ling saw a messy passage at the first time. He saw many traces of fighting here, but they were all traces of the familiar locusts. It seems that there is no problem with the AI, but the locusts guarding this laboratory have escaped. For this reason, Nan Ling was slightly relieved. If it was just like this, it would be fine. Although the locusts are difficult to deal with, he knows this species too well, so he doesn't think it is an opponent that is difficult to deal with. However, at this time, another locust heard the movement here, and then ran over here. Nan Ling was quite alert, but soon realized that these locusts didn't have him as a ghost in their eyes. These locusts just smelled the blood of the corpse in the alloy secret room, and then pounced over here. Nan Ling hesitated slightly when he saw this, and then closed the door of the secret room with his mind again. He roughly knew that this person must have been seriously injured and ran to his descent room in a panic. Although the alloy gate isolated the locusts outside, this person still died of excessive blood loss. This made sense logically. However, he was even more anxious. He did not waste any energy on dealing with these locusts. Instead, he quickly went to his laboratory to find his mental armor. However, when he passed through the wall and arrived at the laboratory, he found that it was in chaos and his mental armor was nowhere to be found. He came to a communicator in the laboratory. He knew from the interface of the communicator that the distress signal to him was sent from here. It was a pity that it was not easy for the distress signal sent here to catch up with the Zhuoxia flying in hyperspace. Judging from the time of sending the signal, it had been delayed for more than 20 minutes. Nan Ling was very worried about the life and death of everyone in this laboratory. After all, they were all people he knew. But now the mental armor was not here, and the life and death of the Jiao who asked him for help was unknown, which was really worrying. Fortunately, Nan Ling was careful and soon found out from the traces around that the people in the laboratory should be evacuated safely. Because although the surroundings were in chaos, not only were the various mental weapons taken away, but also some important spiritual core modules were taken away. Nan Ling breathed a sigh of relief, and then began to worry again. How should he reunite with them? However, he overlooked one thing, that is, although the mental weapons were man-made, they were still his body after all. Does a person need to think about what to do if he wants to return his consciousness to his body? Just think about it. Nan Ling just had the idea of going back in his mind, thinking about the mental weapons, and then whoosh disappeared from the spot. When he came back to his senses, he had already regained consciousness on the mental weapons. At this time, his mental weapons were lying on the ground. After he woke up, he immediately sat up. "Mr. Nan, you are finally here." Jiao's surprised voice came. Nan Ling turned his head and found that the air here was turbid, and it was actually in the passage below the Colosseum. He looked at the people gathered in this narrow passage and asked, "Why did you think of hiding here?" Geo said, "Because I thought that the alloy walls of this passage are specially made for the hell locusts. They can't break the walls of this passage, so it is at least a temporary safe house for us." Nanling nodded and said, "What's going on? Why did the hell locusts come out? And doesn't this base have the defensive system of the caster? Why did they let the hell locusts wreak havoc?" This is what he couldn't understand. The caster's territory should not allow the hell locusts, which are already outdated, to wreak havoc. Geo sighed and said, "Who knows? When all this happened, the situation was completely out of control. I even suspect that this is a man-made incident." Nanling heard this with the greatest malice, and immediately thought whether this was part of the caster's experiment. After all, the Seeker said a few days ago that the speed of the experiment would be increased, and then something like this happened here. However, he still didn't rashly characterize this matter. So many people in this tunnel still need his rescue, and he can't bear to see so many innocent people die tragically. However, the air in this passage is a little poor. Perhaps they had never thought of setting up a ventilation system. Nanling moved his mind and mobilized the power of the spirit core in this body to turn it into flowing wind, spreading to both ends of the passage. The next moment, the air in the entire passage became much fresher, and Nanling also sensed the situation in this passage. He said, "Are these the only ones here? Is there any way to know the specific situation in this laboratory?" Jiabu said, "Maybe there are survivors in other test areas, but if we want to know the specific situation outside, we have to connect to their central control system. But the problem is that we have no way to connect to any central control system now. The system of this laboratory seems to have shut down all of a sudden." Nanling said in one breath, "I understand. Let me go out and investigate the specific situation. You continue to hide here." Jiabu said anxiously, but Nanling shook his head and said, "Don't worry, no matter what the situation is, I will be back in half an hour." Jiabu calmed down a little after hearing this, and then said, "If possible, please ask Mr. Nan to bring me a portable energy source from the laboratory. We have a portable independent transmitter that can contact you outside the central control system, but the prerequisite is that there is energy to activate it. I think as a young man who has worked in this laboratory for 10 years, I should be able to bring some help to you." Nanling readily agreed after hearing this. This was indeed the help he needed. Chapter 384 Accidental Death. Nanling escaped with the wind escape technique, silently and without attracting any attention from any party. In fact, he should not have been so cautious if the enemy was just the Dark Locust. Nanling, who was used to being rigorous, took precautions again. He was not sure if there were any other enemies here, so he did so. When he came to the laboratory outside, he searched patiently and detected the energy response of the portable energy through electromagnetic induction. With these energy modules, he looked at all the equipment around him that had lost power and felt a little strange. It seems that the host has lost power, right? But what kind of situation would cause the host to lose power? He brought the battery back, and Geo quickly assembled a transmitter. Nanling cooperated to adjust an encrypted channel, and then said, "Okay, now you can provide me with remote support." He went out again. This time, Geo connected his retina of the mental armor through the transmitter, so that everything Nanling saw could be seen by Geo, so that he could provide backup. However, just when Nanling activated the escape technique and came to the outside, he heard a wow sound. Nanling asked in confusion, "Why did you vomit?" Geo said painfully, "Mr. Nan, your perspective switches too fast, I feel a little dizzy." Nanling understood. "Isn't this the same as 3D dizziness?" Geo's physique is too weak. He said, "Okay, normally you don't need to look at my field of view. You can look at it when I need you. Also, what should I do next? Do you have any plans?" Geo said, "I think the most urgent thing is to restart the management system here. The inexplicable shutdown of the management system here is the cause of all this." Nanling hesitated a little. He asked, "Is it the system itself?" Geo shook his head decisively and said, "No, the system here is a weak intelligent AI specially built by the founder. It can only cooperate with us and does not have any autonomous judgment ability. Restart the system and we can regain control of the laboratory." Nanling agreed after hearing this. Since the person involved said that there would be no problem with the system here, he would give it a try. He rushed out of the laboratory again and went to the central control management room, where the hardware of the central control system was located. Since the entire central control system was out of power at this time, there must be something wrong with the central control management room. Nanling went to the central control room. When he encountered a dark locust along the way, he easily killed it with the blade at the spirit core. The dark locust could not stop him at all. If there was a gate blocking his way along the way, he would stop and force it to open a crack with the power of magnetic field control, and then directly escape through it. This was easier and less laborious for him. Where to go next? When he encountered a fork in the road, Nanling stopped to ask for directions. After a while, Jia said in a weak voice, "Right." Nanling complained, "I told you not to keep staring at my vision." Jia said, "I thought I could adapt, ugh." He vomited again. Because Nanling started to move at high speed again. Jia's mortal body obviously couldn't adapt to Nanling's rhythm of action. The information intake was too high at once, so his spirit was a little weak. Nanling wanted to laugh at this, but then he suddenly realized that this situation was similar to the situation he encountered when traveling in hyperspace. He couldn't take in too much information in the hyperspace, otherwise his pig brain would be in danger of burning. At this time, he had passed through a series of gates and finally arrived at the door of the central control system room. This time, the gate had a thick anti-magnetic coating, so his electromagnetic control could not open the door. For this reason, he thought for a moment and could only try to invade the data of this door. Unfortunately, the first invasion failed. He really has no talent in this area. If the main body was here, he could easily invade with the lead G2 carried by the main body, but now he felt like he had nowhere to start. Fortunately, Jia, as his backup, immediately said, "Let me do it, I can try this kind of thing." Nanling was relieved when he heard this. Fortunately, there was still a professional. It took about 5 minutes. Jia's data invasion ability was not too strong. He even failed once and almost caused the door to be completely locked. Only then could he barely open it. If I had practiced more before, I would definitely be able to do better. Jia, who had narrowly passed the test, made up for himself. Although Nanling despised Jia's skill, he finally succeeded, so he comforted him. "Okay, I'll give you more practice next time." The doors opened, and he quickly moved his eyes around the room, taking in the entire environment. However, he heard a muffled groan. I fainted. Jia still couldn't accept Nanling's quick shift of sight. Nanling was not used to this, who asked him to peek into his vision. There were many large chassis in the room, which were the modules of the central control system, but now all these modules have lost power and entered silence. Nanling's eyes quickly scanned, and then he saw a corpse in a corner. The body was charred all over, burned by the powerful energy flow. And the posture when he died was still preserved, with a thick energy pipeline held in his arms. And this energy pipeline was obviously pulled out from the port. After Jia finished vomiting, he said in surprise, "This man is too bold." He actually pulled out the main energy interface with his flesh and blood without any safety measures. He was burned by the bursting energy, right? Nanling said. "It seems that he is the culprit of all this, but why did he do this?" Jia said, "Mr. Nan, please check this man's badge. I want to know which laboratory he is from." Nanling thought this was also a clue, so he went forward and turned over the prone body. Then he took a special alloy badge from under the charred corpse with his mind. It was laser engraved on it. "Strong Intelligent AI Laboratory, Tulu." Nanling was stunned for a moment, and he asked, "Could this Tulu be the same Tulu?" Jia took a deep breath and said, "It seems that there is only one Tulu in our laboratory. Is he Lord Tulu?" He himself was a little unbelievable. That proud Tulu died here? Nanling said worriedly, "It seems that we can't restore the power here casually. After all, this is the power that Tulu, a madman, cut off at the cost of his life. The power cut here caused chaos in the entire experimental base, but at the same time, what could make Tulu, a workaholic, cut off the power of the host at the cost of his own life and even let the entire experimental base go out of control?" The rigorous Nanling would not restore the power rashly. He said, "Tell me, where is this strong intelligence AI laboratory? I want to see what this guy did before and why he did it." Chapter 385. Onic Crisis. Nanling had no intention of connecting the central control energy source. He turned to Tulu's previous laboratory and prepared to check what this guy had done. In any case, the current situation of this experimental base must be inseparable from this guy. Nanling was idle now anyway, and there were still 4 months of hyperspace travel time. He was very patient now. So he naturally did not connect the power supply. He would not do such a thing that was obviously a trap. "Mr. Nan, since you have decided to play it safe, then I suggest you get more energy modules." Because the instruments and equipment in this laboratory have overload protection systems, they will automatically disconnect the energy connection when the energy is overloaded, and use their own small energy modules to render along standby state. If you want to turn it on again at this time, unless you restart the energy device, you have to use these energy modules to activate them. Nanling actually wanted to restart the energy module for a moment after hearing this. But later he realized that this matter was still risky. After all, according to his guess, Tulu and others would use this suicidal behavior to shut down the central control system, which meant that the situation should have reached a very critical time. Nanling's innate vigilance against intelligent machines made him particularly alert to such things. So he decisively chose to keep the main energy device here in a shutdown state, and he went to find backup energy. Fortunately, this kind of backup energy module is available in almost every laboratory. He opened some laboratories along the way, and after finding some energy modules, he went to Tulu's laboratory. He dealt with the blind locusts he encountered along the way, and asked Jia for information. Speaking of which, how much do you know about this Tulu after he left our laboratory? Jia said, I know that he received a lot of punishment, but the Foundry still valued his ability and finally chose to let him preside over another laboratory with a lower priority. Nanling was helpless when he heard this. He was indeed very dissatisfied with Tulu, but he knew that Tulu belonged to the Foundry, and even if he was punished, it would not be too serious. It was just that he did not expect that this person could still be in charge of a laboratory after such a big mistake, which was a bit unconvincing. He came all the way to the upper area of the entire experimental base, where most of the laboratory space was relatively small. As he came to an open door, Jia's voice came to his ears. This is it, sir, please look up and see the number on the door frame. Nanling looked up and saw a series of numbers that he didn't understand appeared above the door frame of this laboratory. Jia said, It's this project. Nanling asked, Do you know this project? Jia said, I don't know what it is specifically, but in the irregular project summary 2 days ago, His Excellency the Founder issued an ultimatum to the 5 numbered laboratories including this project, giving them 3 days to sort out the materials and prepare to seal the laboratory. Nanling was surprised. Seal, does this mean giving up these experimental projects? Jia replied, That's right, after all, although some projects seem promising, if the feasibility is poor and there is no result for a long time, then they can only be temporarily sealed. Perhaps when His Excellency the Founder has another idea or discovery, it can be reopened. Nanling said he understood. Then they came to the laboratory. Looking at the meticulous layout of the laboratory, Jia groaned and said, It's really the style of Lord Tulu. His place is always so tidy. It's not like I took over the laboratory for 2 days and it was so messy that it couldn't be seen. Nanling smiled and comforted him. Personal styles are different, and they can't be generalized. As he said that, he had already come to the system host of the laboratory and said, How do I use this thing? Jia said, The slot should be at the back. Look for it. This emergency slot will not be placed in a place that is difficult to install, but it will not be too conspicuous. Nanling quickly searched around the host and found a mosaic cover. He manipulated the magnetic field and moved it slightly, and then pulled the mosaic plate apart, revealing a spare energy slot inside. Then Nanling inserted the energy module into it, and the host started to operate. The startup was very fast, and the system had completed the restart not long after, and a cold voice appeared. I didn't expect that you restarted me. Nanling looked at the 3-dimensional projection in front of him in surprise. He never expected that he would see Tulu's figure inside. However, after a slight hesitation, he understood what was going on and said, You uploaded your consciousness. Tulu shook his head and said, I'm just a digital memory, and the subject did not give me the ability to think logically. Although I don't like you very much, the subject's mission in leaving me is to let those who find me understand what happened. This memory program just glanced at Nanling indifferently without any hostility. Nanling said, Your subject should have died. Tulu's projection said, That is a very high probability event, and you have confirmed it. Jia couldn't help but make an electronic voice. Then what exactly happened here, or what did the former Lord Tulu do? Tulu looked at him calmly and said, Lucky idiot, I didn't expect you to be alive. When I knew that you would replace me as the head of that laboratory, I knew you were going to be lucky. Nanling felt something was strange. He interrupted, I didn't come here to listen to your complaints, I want to know the truth. Tulu said, The truth is the experimental project I am in charge of. The self-awareness system of AI. We designed an AI system full of variables, and gave it the ability to continuously self-learn, so that it can continuously improve its intelligence. But no matter what, we can't make this AI gain true self-awareness. Later, we simply designed a quantum-like thinking model that would trigger infinite variables, making this AI have extremely chaotic logic. Nanling was stunned when he heard it. He said, "You'll get into trouble if you do this." Given his vigilance against artificial intelligence, this kind of artificial intelligence that can infinitely train itself to improve its capabilities is particularly terrifying. But Jia said in disbelief, "No, it is impossible to succeed. The chaotic logical instructions will only make this AI always in a state of freezing. No wonder the forger sealed your laboratory. It is impossible to succeed." Tulu said, "That is just a mediocre idea. I think the previous failure was just because there was not enough computing power. If there is a computer with strong enough computing power to exhaust all these variables, then countless possibilities can be integrated to make AI have true self-awareness." Nanling said coldly, "So, you went to the central control system?" Tulu's memory projection said frankly, "Yes, the main body went there after leaving me." "It seems that he succeeded, didn't he?" "Madman!" Jia was scolded. Nanling understood everything. However, at this moment, the originally dimly lit laboratory suddenly became bright, and all the machines and equipment started to operate. How is it possible? Who turned on the power again? Jia asked in disbelief. Nanling didn't feel so incredible in his heart. He even had a feeling of finally coming. Chapter 386 Don't joke with human life. The whole laboratory suddenly became bright, but in this situation, when Nanling knew why the power was cut off, the restoration of lighting did not mean anything good. He saw that the memory of Tulu suddenly became blurred, as if he was disturbed by something. And the memory said calmly in a fast and distorted tone, "Someone else has restored the system, and it seems that the situation is still getting out of control. I released a devil myself. It's called Tuntian." The last voice fell, and the figure disappeared. Nanling pondered alone. Tuntian. At this moment, the ceiling and walls of the laboratory suddenly opened up, and rows of dense energy ports appeared. This was the automatic defense system of the laboratory being triggered. Nanling knew what was going on without thinking, and hurriedly fled without looking back. At the same time, the entire experimental base was filled with extremely dense explosions, and the sound of the dark locusts kept roaring. He paused for a moment, looked up at the sentry gun that had fallen from the ceiling and was aimed at him, and immediately twisted it with a magnetic field control, and then asked quickly, "Jia, what's going on there?" Jia said hurriedly, "It's terrible. The gates that were originally closed suddenly opened, and some locusts are about to pour into the passage. Everyone is desperately resisting with the weapons they brought in." Nanling immediately fled over again after hearing this, and then swung the spirit core blade in his hand, quickly eliminating the influx of locusts. However, just when he just breathed a sigh of relief, the spirit core shield on his body suddenly fluctuated, and it turned out that a group of armed robots appeared at the other end of the passage and were constantly shooting here. Seeing this, Nanling could only use all his strength to open the spirit core shield, and then shouted to the back, "What are you all doing? Fight back." The people behind him were at a loss for a moment, and then they hurriedly fought back with their weapons. Nanling was really trying his best to resist, and he could only try his best to resist. The firepower in front was too strong, even the spirit core shield was rapidly declining. He had no choice but to continue to squeeze the cellular energy of his body and extract more spirit core power to resist. Fortunately, the counterattack from the rear soon began, and the firepower was considered to be a stalemate. At this time, Nanling felt a little better, and then asked, "Jia, is there a place to turn? Find a way quickly." Jia said embarrassedly at this time, "Yes, there is a backup airport under the backup system, which should not have been invaded yet." Nanling said helplessly, "Is there no facility that is out of the control of the intelligence system?" Jia said, "It is impossible for such a thing to exist." Nanling reluctantly said, "Okay, let's go there first. Hurry up, I can't hold on here." He really couldn't hold on now, and could only urge the people behind him to evacuate quickly. He tried his best to hold on, and the spirit core power in the cells was continuously squeezed, and then formed layers of spirit core shields under the blessing of his divine thoughts. He discovered that the power of the spirit core was greatly influenced by the will. The stronger the will, the greater the impact of the spirit core. This is a power that can directly interfere with reality more than the spirit power. And it was under the guidance of this power that Nanling had a very deep feeling. He felt that he could resist the attack and support it with the spirit core shield, so he gritted his teeth and supported it. As a result, it seemed that he could continuously extract power from his body to support it. Even in a faint moment, he had a very unique touch. His consciousness touched a wonderful realm because of its purity in a brief moment. At that moment, his spirit core shield suddenly became extremely solid. But just when he was about to try further, he was suddenly awakened by Jiao's call. Jiao said, "Mr. Nan, we're ready to evacuate, you should leave quickly too." Nanling woke up, and the spirit core shield immediately fluctuated violently. He said, "You go first, I'll get rid of the pursuers first." After he finished speaking, he persisted for a while, noticing that the people behind him had evacuated, at least they were not within the attack range of the armed robots, and then he rushed forward. His spirit core shield was shattered after a short moment, and at the same time, Nanling's left shoulder, side abdomen, thigh, right arm and other parts were attacked by energy. The severe pain stimulated his nerves, and he finally mobilized the power of his spirit core to complete a short-distance instantaneous wind escape, and the next moment he suddenly appeared in the group of armed robots. He endured the pain, his body spun rapidly, and the spirit core blade on his right arm danced with it. The next moment, a piece of mechanical parts was chopped off and a series of explosions appeared in the passage. Indeed, these robots seemed extremely fragile after being approached by Nanling. But Nanling was not satisfied with the result of the battle. If he had a qualified partner to cooperate with him, he would not need to be injured to clean up all the 71 robots. The robots in the caster's laboratory are very strong, with powerful alloy materials, powerful motors, and professional combat programs. But all of these seem so powerless in front of the spirit core blade. After solving these troubles, Nanling immediately joined up with Jiao and the others. However, the extreme squeezing of the power in the cells in his body just now made him feel physically exhausted for the first time. But what is more serious is the lack of spirit. He consumed too much spirit in this activity. After all, it was a spirit that was projected from a distance. Without the main body and the main consciousness, the spiritual power of this part of the divine consciousness was used less and less. But he found that his thoughts seemed to be purer under this kind of fatigue. Because he felt that these consciousnesses of his were consciousness-descended bodies anyway, and it didn't matter if they were lost, it was not like he had never lost them before. And his star spirit weapon was a bit of a pity, it was obviously well nurtured. But after all, it was a body, and it belonged to the Seekers or Casters. It was natural for him to lose it to protect the researchers under the Caster, right? Because his own life was not in danger, Nanling's thoughts naturally became purer. He began to become silent, just looking at Jia, hoping that he could find a way to save himself with his people. Jia said, "Mr. Nan, you're injured." Nanling said, "It's a minor injury. The self-healing ability of the mind armor will heal quickly." "But have you thought of an escape route?" Jia said embarrassedly, "I have thought of it, but it will be very dangerous along the way." Nanling said indifferently, "Tell me the path, I will clear the way for you." Jia said sadly, "But your condition," Nanling said. "Have you forgotten? Last time I collapsed my self-consciousness and I was able to come back. For me, it was just a matter of resting for a few days, but for you, it's a life. I hate to joke about human life." He said it seriously. It seems that he has understood something. Chapter 387 The Final Cliff. Nanling led the way in front in a tired state of mind. Tired, he was very tired, and getting more and more tired. His movements became sluggish, and some reactions became slower. But he did not stop, just destroyed and killed all the obstacles he saw along the way, so that the people behind him could follow. He already knew that his mental power and this body might be lost, so he had fewer concerns and his thoughts were pure. The mental armor slowly became scarred, because Nanling rarely used the spiritual core shield for defense, but used the strong physical attributes of the mental armor to attack. His mental power had been consumed too much, and he would rather endure the pain and save more mental power to allow this mental armor to last longer. "Mr. Nan, it's enough, let us fend for ourselves." The sentimental Jia would burst into tears. He felt that he was really not worthy of Nanling's efforts. He seemed to see a hero standing in front of him. Nanling panted and said, "Don't make trouble. This body of mine is destined to be lost. It's good that you survive. At least you should prepare the outside world. Things here are too big." After experiencing this series of battles, he has realized that this is an artificial intelligence with self-awareness. This Tuntian is very cruel. He doesn't talk nonsense with them at all. He just works. This utilitarian and cold and efficient approach naturally reminds Nanling of Tulu. Could it be that the self-awareness of this artificial intelligence is learning to imitate Tulu? Jia couldn't convince Nanling at all, so he could only follow him and keep moving forward and fighting. At this time, they were blocked in front and pursued behind. Nanling had to go back to deal with the pursuers while clearing the way in front, otherwise the team behind would have died long ago. In order to save his own losses, he even exposed himself to the firepower of the other side's armed robots without any scruples, and took the opponent's attack and killing to quickly clear the pursuers. In this way, when they arrived at the backup airport mentioned by Jia, Nanling was actually already scarred, with charred smoke coming out of his body and wounds everywhere. This port was indeed not controlled by the swallowing sky, because the backup port system was not connected to the energy, which was why it could be preserved under the strong invasion of the other party. When Jia arrived here, he hesitated. Nanling pulled him and said, "Hurry up, the nearest ship, start it and rush out." Jia said, "But this ship is not big enough." Nanling said, "It's better not to be big enough. Can you drive a ship that is too big manually?" Jia was stunned, and then he came to his senses, and then hurriedly called on his companions to start the spaceship. Everyone boarded the spaceship, but although the ship was not big, it was too difficult to start it manually when the intelligence system was blocked. Although everyone was a technician, they were not professionally matched after all. They were busy for a long time but could not start the ship. At this time, the pursuers had come again. Hundreds of armed robots holding weapons marched in unison and launched attacks again and again. Nanling was sitting at the door of the cabin and was too weak to stand up. He turned his head to look at Jia, who was pale, and said, "Hey, come on." As soon as he finished speaking, he stretched out his hand and pushed forward, and used his last spiritual will and the thought that had been purified to the extreme at this moment to activate all the spiritual core power that could be activated in this body. The next moment, a strong energy wall that seemed to be an impenetrable cliff appeared in front of the spacecraft, blocking all attacks for it. Nanling's last spiritual core shield can be said to be his unprecedented pinnacle. Unfortunately, he could not see anything, because after doing this, his consciousness left this body and could no longer maintain it. Jia looked at the spiritual armor leaning against the door of the cabin in a calm posture, and suddenly burst into tears. "Mr. Nanling, I will not let you down." He seemed to have made a decision. Nanling's consciousness returned to his original body in the hyperspace. This was really uncomfortable for him, but at least it was better than the last time when his consciousness was completely destroyed. He was now in a state of staying up all night for 3 consecutive days. However, his body was already asleep, so he fell into a deep sleep on the spot, and he didn't feel uncomfortable for long. So after a good sleep, Nanling's main consciousness slowly woke up. He thought of something and looked at the time. He found that he had slept for more than 20 hours. It seemed that he was exhausted before. "Sister Liji, are you there?" he called out in his heart. As a result, Liji no. Tu responded, "Master Shaonan, what do you want to talk to me about?" Nanling said speechlessly, "I'm looking for your mother." Liji no. Tu said mischievously, "But I think that is my original body, at most my sister." Nanling was at a loss for a moment. Why is Liji's copy program so naughty? Isn't it said that it is AI? He said helplessly. "Okay, you can do it too, can you make Zhuoxia stop first?" Liji no. Tu said, "But Master Xiaonan, I'm just your personal AI and I can't directly operate the spacecraft." Nanling. "What is the use of this AI?" Liji no. Tu seemed to be holding back a laugh and said, "But I can wake up my mother's data." Nanling was even more speechless. He always felt that this AI was also teasing him. Nanling could only say, "Okay, wake up your sister Liji quickly." Liji no. Tu said, "Okay, what do you want me to do?" Nanling almost sat up in shock from his dying illness. If it weren't for the fact that he couldn't move in this hyperspace, he would probably have cursed. At this time, he could only curse in his heart. "Sister Liji, are you teasing me?" It turned out that Liji no. Tu was Liji. She just used her small account to play with Nanling again. Liji chuckled and said, "I just wanted to lighten up the atmosphere because you looked so serious." Nanling said faintly, "So you just treat me as a joke?" Liji said, "Okay, don't talk about that. It's not that easy to stop the ship temporarily. The energy loss is very high. Are you sure you want to do this?" Nanling said, "Stop for a while. I have to contact the outside world." Liji had no choice but to stop the ship. The Zhuoxia was in deep hyperspace at this time. It was not as simple as before to escape from hyperspace. It was necessary to enter shallow hyperspace from deep hyperspace first, and then jump out of shallow hyperspace. Boom. Nanling only felt the hull shake, and all his senses were restored. Then the information of the hyperspace active group was flooding the screen in the intelligence core, and Fanny was still chattering. Everyone, get excited, we have 4 months. Mo was calmer, and she said, something is wrong, I'm afraid we can't stay awake in the hyperspace this time, so where are we? Li Ji responded in the group at this time. Everyone, because of the special request of baby Xionan, we need to stop temporarily. Nanling also said, sorry, I encountered some very serious things, and I will explain it to you later. As soon as he finished speaking, he had sent a message to his mother, Madame Rose. He didn't know how to investigate the affairs of Yu Yu, so he could only ask his mother for help. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novel, as there you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 388. A true Omnic Crisis. On the Zhuoxia, everyone gathered on the bridge and listened to Nanling's explanation. Nanling sighed and said, I'm sorry, my emergency stop actually has little to do with this, but something very bad must have happened on the other side of the galaxy. As he spoke, he opened the network port of Yu Yu through the link given by Madame Rose. He said, Sister Li Ji, please build a strong enough firewall to disconnect the port connection at any time when necessary. Li Ji nodded carefully. She probably knew why Nanling was so cautious, because she had already learned about what happened in Yu Yu from the internet. She even screamed it for Nanling and played some pictures directly. Those were some clips of Yu Yu. Countless planets were caught in sudden wars, countless residents' homes were destroyed, and then humans were forced to be contained by countless machines, human resistance. There was almost no such picture, because humans could not use any weapons at all. They were like returning to the Stone Age and could only fight robots with sticks. The picture stopped abruptly. Li Ji said nervously, I was discovered, and the other party almost caught me. Nanling also said nervously, is it okay? Li Ji said, the other party's computing power is very strong and can almost crush me. She was still frightened. But fortunately, the network ports of each star field are actually limiters. Its computing power cannot be fully exerted after leaving the port. Nanling nodded and said, its name is Tuntian, and it was released from the Foundry's laboratory 21 hours ago. This is an AI with self-awareness created in the Foundry's laboratory. It relies on the computing power of the entire Foundry's laboratory. It is normal for you to be suppressed by it. Everyone showed a solemn expression when they heard this, and Mo immediately thought of the key. You mean, from now on AI has become untrustworthy, and we have to be enemies with AI? But, how is this possible? Thanks to the operations of the big guys behind the scenes, people of this era have no concept of intelligent machine crisis. Nanling said. Now all we can do is to inform the people around us of these things as soon as possible, so that everyone can be prepared. Fan has already started to contact Yi Chen, and others have also communicated with the people around them to inform them of the news. This seems to be a very distant news, but if it is not handled properly, then Tiantan is very likely to copy its own logic program through various network ports, so as to do something similar to Yu Yu. This may soon become a catastrophe covering the entire human civilization. At the same time, Madame Rose also contacted him and asked, do you know what is going on? This sudden crisis of intelligent machines has driven our Dieting organization crazy. Nanling asked, I know what is going on, but is there any information fee? Madame Rose immediately said in a disappointed tone, do you have to pay for providing information to your mother? Nanling. ... If he didn't know this mother's temperament too well, he might have been fooled by her. But he really had no way to deal with this statement, so he could only accept his fate and send the information to Madame Rose. Madame Rose was silent for a while, then said, these great ones seem to be dissatisfied with the current development of mankind, and want to force it to stimulate the potential of mankind. As expected of Madame Rose, she guessed the essence of things directly. Nanling thought of the possible connection between Madame Rose and Feng Xianji, and he couldn't help asking, Mom, in the eyes of these great ones, what exactly is human beings? Madame Rose said, they are high above, and have long been away from the identity of human beings. Perhaps because of past relationships, they have special feelings for the human group, but they are too old. The individual feelings and existence of human beings are meaningless to them. Only the weight of the entire human group can move them. Nanling was silent and could only sigh. If this is the case, it's no wonder. He didn't know how to describe this situation, and even felt that his heart was divided into two parts. The one that represented the past life experience, the boy who came out of the bottom, was extremely angry about this. But the other half, who was absolutely rational, the part that had long seen the various defects and difficulties of the current human society, was looking forward to the changes brought about by this situation. With the two emotions overlapping, Nanling found that she couldn't have any objective opinion on this matter at all. Lady Rose seemed to be able to see his complicated feelings about this matter, and said, "This is the price of change. In fact, from another perspective, by doing this, those great ones are actually detonating the hidden dangers of human civilization in advance, when it is not yet the most terrible." Nanling heard this and said with enlightenment, "The technological civilization of UU." Lady Rose said, "Yes, UU's technological civilization is actually a product of the Great One's laissez-faire experiment. It is much more developed than other human star fields, but it is also much more fragile in the face of this crisis." Nanling said, "Those big guys are really amazing. They treat this kind of thing as their own experiment." Lady Rose said, "But you can't deny that they have also preserved the hope that mankind has always had. It's just that now it seems that their patience has come to an end. They think that instead of dragging it on like this, it is better to deal a heavy blow to the galactic human civilization that has gradually become a stagnant pool of water." Nanling sighed with emotion when he saw this. He agreed with this statement to some extent, but it also meant endless wars and the deaths of countless innocent people. He was anxious about this, but then he thought, what qualifications did he have to be anxious? He didn't have the ability to change all this, so why did he think about all this? But he couldn't help but worry about Geo and others who were far away in UU. Could they hold on? Unfortunately, even if he wanted to transmit his consciousness there, he didn't know where to locate it. Even if Geo and others escaped, he didn't have the coordinates for transmitting their consciousness. Everyone chatted again, expressing their concerns about the current situation, but finally chose to continue their voyage. There was no way, after all, they couldn't do anything else at the moment. Except for Li Ji, who sent some information back to Fan Oling of the Star Federation and performed some operations, others couldn't do much about it. Compared with such a major event in the world, they were still too small. However, when traveling in deep hyperspace, Nanling existed blankly in his own consciousness space, and an idea that he was eager to try became clearer and clearer in his heart. Chapter 389. Because of ambition. While sleeping, Nanling wanted to land somewhere again with his consciousness. Although he knew that the initial landing coordinates were meaningless, he decided to transfer his consciousness there after hesitating for a while. Because he didn't know where else to go except there. However, when he transferred his consciousness there, he still had a thought of what if he could find his spiritual armor? So while transferring, he was thinking about the location of his other body. As a result, in this lightning moment, when his consciousness passed through the black hole during the transfer, he suddenly felt a very kind call. He knew that it was his other body, and his spiritual armor was calling him, so when he transferred, he deviated from the target and used the power of the remote transmission device to fall directly to the location that called him. The next moment, he opened his eyes again. Then, a severe pain rolled over. Nanling opened his eyes and looked at his broken but recovering body, and a feeling of great joy suddenly arose in the painful touch. At this time, he wanted to move, but a strange and mysterious voice sounded beside him. "I advise you to wait until your body recovers before taking action." Nanling looked over curiously, but saw that it was a diagnostic device talking to him. But Nanling didn't indulge at all. How could he not know his own body? He checked the state of his body with his mind and found that many open wounds had been closed, but the internal damage was still being repaired. So he took a deep breath, mobilized the power of the spiritual core in his body, and performed a warm wind technique to bless himself. The next moment, all the cells in his body were activated and began to release power to accelerate recovery. And he also took action, but his every move was very careful to avoid secondary trauma to his body. The voice sounded again. "It seems that you are not a person who likes to listen to advice." Nanling said calmly, "If everything is based on authority, then how can our human civilization make a breakthrough? You can think that I am willful, but that is also based on the premise that I have enough confidence." The voice said, "Interesting, you're indeed a very confident person. I rarely see someone who can go head-to-head with Tulu to that extent. But it seems that you seem to have a lot of complaints in your heart." Nanling said calmly, "I dare not, and what's more, no matter how many complaints I have, this world is not subject to my will." The voice said, You can see it clearly. I have some understanding of why the seekers of knowledge value you so much. Nanling hesitated and asked, "Are you the caster? Or the book collector?" The voice said, "I'm the caster. The book collector will not intervene in such matters." Nanling was a little surprised, but then fell into a long silence. The caster seemed to understand what he was thinking and said, "It seems that you have a grudge against me. Do you think I released the heaven devouring on purpose?" Nanling did not respond, but it was enough to make his attitude clear. The caster said calmly, "I can tell you clearly that all I did was to amplify this possibility and then let it happen on its own. For example, Tulu, I am familiar with his personality, so I put him in that laboratory, knowing that with his competitive spirit, there is a high probability that he will complete his experiment at all costs. But he was able to wake up in time and shut down the machine on the spot at the cost of his own life to interrupt the heaven-devouring process, which I did not expect. But at this time another variable appeared. I did not expect that the tentacles of fate would be mixed into my laboratory, which made the things that had been interrupted by Tulu and you carefully avoided continue." Nanling pondered for a moment. According to the caster's description, it seemed that he just released a possibility and then observed the development of this possibility. No, he soon realized that this was not right. With the ability of the casters, they could completely turn this possibility into inevitability. Perhaps the so-called tentacles of fate were simply in the observation of the big guys? And this title is so interesting that he almost immediately thought of the group of digital lives hiding in the dark corners and holding back evil. Nanling asked faintly, "I don't understand, why do you have to explain this to me?" The caster said, "Because we all value you, a young person who is already on the road of innovation. We all hope that you can go further before you are truly supernormal." After hearing this, Nanling first understood that the so-called supernormal should be to abandon the human body. He said calmly, "Are all these things happening because of me?" The caster said, "That's not it. We were planning to trigger this disaster in advance, because triggering it now is just a disaster, and waiting for it to explode will be like a catastrophe. I hope you can understand us. For the development of human civilization over the years, we have suppressed this matter for too long. Too many hidden dangers have accumulated in human civilization. Once it completely explodes, it will be a very terrible thing." Nanling saw that he was sincere and could actually understand the difficulty. He even understood it before he said so. It's just that his emotional part as a human being could never accept this. Thinking of this, he suddenly remembered the great man he had first heard of, the Oracle. He asked, "Your Excellency, the Oracle once predicted the end of human civilization. Can you tell me what the predicted end is?" The caster said without any hesitation, "What you saw in Yu and what is happening in Yu now is a possible end." Nanling asked, "Are there different possibilities for the end?" The caster said, "The future is uncertain, and this possibility of an end is also what we have been avoiding, because if artificial intelligence like Tiantan really rises, it will become our eternal enemy." Nanling asked again, "What about the other possibility?" The caster sighed and said, "Another possibility is that all human beings upload their consciousness to exist in digital form, but the real world cannot be abandoned, because the digital world needs to rely on reality to exist. So in reality, they will make steel mechanical bodies for themselves to carry their own consciousness codes, and the entire human civilization will thus be transformed into a silicon-based civilization. In fact, you should also be able to see that these two situations are actually different paths to the same end. Even if we don't have so much ambition, the transformation of the entire civilization to silicon-based may be the best choice. Because individuals in silicon-based civilizations are not disturbed by so many selfish desires, everyone's temperament is clear at a glance, and every individual has the opportunity to live forever." Nanling smiled silently when he heard this, and he said, "But our enterprising spirit does not allow it. Becoming a silicon-based civilization actually means locking the upper limit of civilization." Chapter 390. Gravitational anomaly, fill in the missing part. What a sin, I am forced to update more. The conversation with the forger ended quickly, and in the end Nanling just maintained the courtesy to the big boss and did not show much intention to get close to him. But what made Nanling feel something was wrong was that since the psychic armor could be saved, then Geo and the other should also be saved. Why didn't they appear in his mind until now? When he woke up from the psychic armor, his mind was already scanning the surroundings. Although he saw some familiar researchers, the most familiar Geo was nowhere to be seen. Nanling dragged his body covered with wounds as he walked out. When he opened the door, he saw two researchers nervously surrounding him and saying, "Mr. Nan, you are not well yet. You should rest more now." Nanling waved his hand indifferently and said, I know my body. It's fine. Where is Jiebu? Why didn't he come to see me? The researcher looked a little embarrassed, and then said hesitantly, Lord Jiebu didn't let us say. Nanling said unhappily, he is so secretive. Is he hiding something from me? Then he came to the cabin on the outer layer of the spaceship and saw the boundless starry sky outside the observation window. He said again, the spaceship is up, and it's good that it's up in time. But didn't you have to wait a while before you could manually start the spaceship before I ran out of strength? And I don't have much confidence that the spirit core shield that I used all my strength to open at the end can last that long. So how did you completely control the operating system of a spaceship and start it up smoothly in such a short time? Nanling's question made the researchers around him speechless. They really couldn't say anything. Nanling shook his head, then turned his head to look at the monitoring light eye in the corner of the spacecraft and said, Is that so, Jiewe? A moment later, a miniature figure appeared in the light eye. It was Jiewe. He bowed to Nanling with some trepidation, and then said, I'm sorry, Mr. Nan, I have uploaded my consciousness to become a digital life. Nanling had expected this a long time ago, but when it really came true, it was still a little complicated. He said, Why are you apologizing to me? You made a great decision for all the survivors. You were a great guy. Jie said embarrassedly, but I remember that Mr. Nan said last time that you hoped I would keep my original body. Nanling said, I told you that you were a great guy. Don't be so hypocritical. Tell me what you were going to do next. Now, it is because of the protection of your digital life that you have a chance to survive under the oppression of the swallowing sky. As he spoke, he went to the bridge. His physical condition was getting better and better along the way. This body seemed to have the addition of consciousness, and all the cells in the body were becoming more and more active, even more active than before. Nanling could keenly feel that the quantum process in this body had increased again. If only 10% of the quantum energy was quantized before, now it is almost 20%. This progress is very good. He can feel that the power that can be tapped out of this body is stronger. Feeling this, Nanling really felt that the world was unfair. If he had such a body, he only needed to continuously tap the power that this body itself possessed, and he would be strong enough. Unlike the fragility of human flesh, he had to work hard to deduce the way of cultivation step by step in order to continuously improve its strength. But even so, Nanling felt that his original body would only be beaten in front of this spiritual armor. His body was recovering quickly, and he also came to the bridge. Here he saw Jiewe sitting on the captain's seat, or Jiewe's shed body. This body was still alive, with various nutrients to keep it alive, but it had no thoughts. Jiewe's figure was projected next to him, and he said, I plan to make a super brain that can carry my code for me, but I'm not sure if there will be hidden dangers. After all, I'm worried that it will be invaded by Tiantan. Nanling looked at Jiewe, who was worried, knowing that he didn't want to give up his original body just like that. That depends on how your firewall is. As long as there is a firewall that can resist Tiantan's invasion, then I think it doesn't matter. Nanling didn't say no directly. Jiewe was relieved instead. Of course, he knew that no matter how worried he was now, it would not work. Nanling did not speak again, but looked at the parameters on the bridge, and then judged with experience. Are you going to go somewhere in the dark deep space? Are you going to imitate the looters and build a base in the rubble area in the dark deep space? Jiewe said. This is the only way. Building a base in a planetary system is too big a target. With the computing power of Tiantan, we will be discovered soon. Nanling sighed and said, in fact, your disadvantage against Tiantan is too obvious. I really don't know what chances you still have. Jie was not at a loss. He just said, Mr. Nan, I'm not as smart as you, so I just know to do the things in front of me. As for what to do in the future, leave it to the future me to deal with. Nanling looked at Jie unexpectedly, thinking that this person should be wise but foolish. Indeed, no matter how much they think now, it is useless. How to take care of the present so that the people in the present can live well is the key. He looked at the star map again, and said, there is no target location marked on this star map. Are you just trying your luck? Jie showed rare confidence when he heard this, and he said, Sir, you don't know, before I entered the mind-arming laboratory, I followed my teacher to do research on abnormal gravitational points in deep space for a long time. This is what my teacher observed, that is, there are always some abnormal gravitational points in deep space, which inexplicably attract some asteroids and debris together. This is also the key for those looters to have a foothold in deep space. Although I didn't learn anything else, I still learned the ability to observe these abnormal gravitational points. So even though there is nothing on the star map, there is still a high probability that there will be asteroid clusters at the target point we are heading to. Nanling did not speak, because this was something beyond his knowledge system. Jia said. Moreover, normal gravity detection equipment cannot detect this asteroid group, because of the gravitational anomaly, the gravitational parameters of a large area that show irregular fluctuations, which can completely cover up the information of the asteroid group. And there is no starlight there, and it is completely beyond the detection range of the optical detector. Nanling laughed and said, if that's the case, this is really an extraordinary discovery. What about your teacher? He must be a very powerful master. Jia shook his head and sighed, my teacher is dead. He died of depression after his experimental project was banned. Although the research materials have been sealed, my teacher was resentful before he died, and directly deleted all his life's research materials. That's why I dare to use this method to seek a foothold for us. Otherwise, I'm worried that Tuntigan will get the sealed materials and discover our plan. Chapter 391 The Game of the Bosses. This time, Nanling stayed quietly on the bridge and chatted with Jia. He also wanted to see what the gravitational anomaly Jia mentioned was. About 3 hours later, they finally approached the first target location. Nanling looked at this place and felt that it was nothing special in the darkness. There were indeed some floating stones here, but they were like dust in the dark deep space and could not bear the weight of the survival of everyone on this spaceship. Seeing this, Jia said somewhat embarrassedly, well, this is not a suitable target. Nanling comforted. At least it proves that your method is effective, but you were just unlucky. If you don't mind, can you show me how you find such gravitational anomalies? I'm very curious. Jia said. Of course I don't mind, sir, please look, this is the algorithm for calculating gravitational anomalies. From the results, this gravitational anomaly is actually not abnormal. It's just that if you add the surrounding gravitational parameters into the calculation, you will find that some of the parameters here seem to be wrong, but no matter what, you can get the same answer in the end. It's really a magical phenomenon. Nanling looked at the parameters and nodded repeatedly, thinking that this was too right. However, at this moment, the light and shadow around them suddenly fluctuated, and a dark figure appeared beside them. Nanling reacted immediately, then looked at the dark shadow and said, "Sir Seeker of Knowledge, why are you here too?" With the ship hiding from Tiantan's tracking, the big guys were able to take turns boarding the ship, which shows that their actions have never been outside the surveillance of the big guys. Jia also reacted immediately, but his projection showed an excited look, but in fact he said quite calmly, "Hello, Sir Seeker of Knowledge." The expression on his face was a little strange, as if he was confused about his state of mind that was too calm when he should have been excited. Nanling understood this. After all, he had become a digital life and had to get used to this overly rational life. Seeker of Knowledge nodded to Nanling. He never mentioned what was happening at the moment, but just looked at the calculation of the gravitational anomaly that they had just done together with a nostalgic look. He said, "When I discovered this anomaly, I asked the caster to help study it. Later, when I heard that he had interrupted this research, I felt quite sorry. I didn't expect that it would be useful here now." This time, Jia couldn't hold it in any longer. He said, "I didn't expect that this topic was given by the Seeker of Knowledge. We have disappointed you." The Seeker of Knowledge shook his head and said, "That's not necessary. At least you have invented a method to discover these gravitational anomalies, which has been a great help to me." As he spoke, he stretched out his hand and clicked, and a star map appeared in front of Nanling. Nanling had also seen this star map, which was the star map around the Wisdom Domain. However, the next moment, many light spots that were different from the positions of the stars appeared on these star maps. These light spots were scattered throughout the Wisdom Domain in large and small sizes. The Seeker said, "Look at these spots of light. They are the gravitational anomalies around the Wisdom Domain that I have explored over the years. They were discovered thanks to the formula that you and your disciples discovered." Nanling frowned and said, "But what's the use of this?" The Seeker said, "I don't know what else it can be used for. We just guessed that this may be related to the space we are in. As for discovering its anomalies, I'm afraid you will have to explore it yourself. Our thinking is limited and we can't think about things that are beyond our cognition." Nanling didn't care after hearing this. He just nodded and said, "Okay, let's try." Then he looked at the star map and said to Jia, "Look, this star map came at the right time. It should have the information we need." Seeing this, the Seeker disappeared silently. His mission this time was just to give them the star map. Obviously, Nanling already knew his purpose, but just didn't say it out loud. The two sides already had a certain tacit understanding. Nanling sighed in his heart, and said to Jie, "It seems that those great ones will provide you with a certain degree of support, come on." Jie said sensibly, "I understand, sir, I will not resist this kind of help, because I will not put everyone in danger for my personal emotions." Sensible to the point of distress. Nanling nodded and said, "It's a pity that I can't help you too much. The recovery of this body has consumed a lot of my mental energy. I hope you will have settled down when I come next time." As soon as he finished speaking, he found a place to sit on the bridge, and then his consciousness quietly dissipated. Nanling returned to the Juxia and fell asleep again. However, after waking up, he entered the formula for detecting gravitational instability points that he had obtained into the system on the spacecraft through consciousness input. He thought this formula was very interesting and he could try it himself next time. When he returned to Geo again, his severely injured body had already improved a lot. And Geo's spacecraft had finally stopped. As expected, they found the docking point according to the star map provided by the Seeker of Knowledge, a gravitational anomaly point where asteroids are abnormally concentrated. There are quite a few asteroids here, which should have been captured when a group of wandering asteroids passed by in the early years. However, these asteroids are actually in a relatively static state at this gravitational anomaly point, and there will be no collision. Geo's voice immediately sounded on the bridge. "Sir, you are here. We are studying how to build it. Because we escaped in a hurry, we can actually say that we are penniless and have nothing." Nanling said, "Is there no refusion reactor on the ship?" Geo said, "There is only a small reactor. We are planning how to expand this small reactor, at least to make a medium-sized reactor first." Nanling shook his head and said, "Let me go out and take a look. By the way, I'll give you a reactor drawing. You can take a look first." Geo received a reactor drawing that was completely different from the technological style at the time. He glanced through it quickly, then said, "This is amazing. This is a technology that is completely different from the current scientific and technological system. How did you get it? Did you dig up some prehistoric civilization?" Nanling laughed and said, "No, this was developed by me and my companions to deal with the current situation." Geo also said excitedly, "If that's the case, then maybe it really works. Give me a month, and I can build this reactor, and there won't be any risk of dismantling the small reactor that already exists on this ship." His admiration for Nanling can be said to be endless, and he now feels that Nanling will always find another way to solve the problem. Chapter 392 Abnormal Hole. In the next month, Nanling spent all his time on the construction of the survivor base on Geo's side. He used his own electromagnetic control and flame control to help Geo speed up the construction of the reactor. If Fanny and Mo were around, Nanling could even build such a reactor in less than 3 days. But there was only Jie here, so the construction period was naturally much slower. In the end, it took 13 days to build the planetary reactor of the survivor base. But this reactor did not start operating immediately, but it was very important to carry out radiation removal. This step is very important. Once this level of reactor is in operation, it can certainly produce terrible energy and mass, but it will also radiate a large amount of energy into the void, attracting the attention of Tiantung. Nanling felt that he had learned something new, and he also learned the formula of this radiation-removing coating. The foundry really has countless good things here. So the radiation-removing layer was constructed for another 10 days, and on the 23rd day, this planetary-level heavy giant reactor was officially put into operation. The next thing was much easier to do. It was nothing more than mining, production, and expansion, just like in the game of Galaxy Rank. This kind of thing would be easier with the digital life of Jiegu. Even if Nanling was good at operations, he didn't have to waste his thinking ability in such a place. He just used the resources here to try to make a pair of flying wings for himself. This pair of flying wings referred to a lot of technologies in the caster's laboratory, and could use the power of the spirit corpuscle. After he spent 5 days to make it and 2 days to debug it, he finally loaded the flying wings and took off into the air, flying towards the gravitational anomaly. He was just curious about what this gravitational anomaly was like nearby, and it could cause such a magical celestial anomaly. The area of this gravitational anomaly seemed vast, attracting tens of thousands of asteroids to surround it, but the middle position was empty and there was nothing, as if the original gravity in this area had become repulsion. Nanling curiously passed through this blank area and came to the center point, and then turned on various detection methods for detection, but found nothing. The only thing he knew was that there was an extremely tiny anomaly here. Afterwards, Nanling continued to exploit the ability of a cultivator, that is, to exploit his divine consciousness. He scanned the area with his divine consciousness bit by bit, not missing any clues. The first time he scanned with his divine consciousness, he found nothing, which made him feel quite entangled. Then he started the second time. This time he increased his strength and concentrated on the precise area calculated in the Jiabu formula to scan, and finally found an abnormality in a place as big as a pinhole. In this pinhole-sized place, he felt a familiar fluctuation. This fluctuation did not come from reality, but he had felt it in hyperspace travel. If he hadn't known, he would have really ignored it. He quickly grasped this point to perceive. The range became smaller and smaller, and his thoughts became more and more focused on the pinhole-sized space, and he was surprised to find a hole in the end. A hole in the void. This hole is very small, which can be said to be insignificant to the vast galaxy, but to Nanling, it is like a new continent. He was full of excitement, and then subconsciously gathered a powerful divine consciousness to explore further. He even tried to use his mind to drill into the hole to explore it. He thought that even if he lost this part of his mind, it was sacrificed for scientific research. However, something he didn't expect happened. His mind entered the hole without any hindrance, and his consciousness and the mind armor also slipped into it, and then his consciousness returned to chaos. When Nanling's consciousness was awake again, he found that he had returned to his original body. He felt himself blankly, thinking that he should suffer heavy losses this time. Maybe his consciousness was annihilated again. As a result, he found that his condition was much better than he imagined. Not only did he not feel any discomfort, but the loss seemed not to be great, that is, the loss when he was active in the mind armor before. Nanling was extremely surprised by this phenomenon. He quickly sent his consciousness again. The next moment, his consciousness woke up again in the mind armor. In his ears was Jiabu's anxious call. "Mr. Nan, what's wrong with you? Mr. Nan?" Nanling found that he was floating in the void in an out-of-control posture. He quickly activated the flying wings again to stabilize his body, and then said, "I'm here, don't worry, I'm fine." Jiabu then said, "Do you need me to send someone to rescue you?" Nanling shook his head, looked at the magical gravitational anomaly and dared not try again, then said, "No, I can come back by myself." When he returned to the survivor's base with flying wings, before Jiabu came forward to greet him, a black figure appeared beside Nanling. The seeker couldn't wait to ask, "What did you see at that point?" Nanling looked at him and didn't hide it. "I didn't find anything, but my consciousness suddenly returned to my body." At this time, the voice of the caster suddenly came from the control system of the survivor base. At that moment, you should have touched the mysterious space. Nanling noticed Jiao's ugly face, and he said calmly, "I don't know, after all, it was just a moment, I can only say maybe." The caster said, "It's already very helpful, this must be the key to our breaking the space blockade of the Milky Way." "But how to break this blockade?" "No, I have to rebuild my laboratory immediately. Without the little guys in the laboratory to help me think, I can't come to any conclusions by myself." The caster left anxiously. Nanling realized that the caster's laboratory was so important to the caster. This is the external brain. After receiving the news, the seeker of knowledge said happily, "I knew you would surprise me. All the discoveries here will be sent to Senior Book Collector. If you can truly explore the mystery of this gravitational anomaly, then you will have the qualification of Star Pioneer." Nanling didn't think it was special. He was indeed very interested in the gravitational anomaly, but he didn't want to show his feelings in front of the big guys. It was not until the seeker of knowledge left that Nanling looked at Jiao, who seemed to be still unhappy, and made a joke. "In fact, do you think that compared to Tian Swallow, the caster is the terrifying existence that can destroy human civilization?" Jiao smiled, because he knew that Nanling was with him. Chapter 393 Intelligent Virus. For the next period of time, Nanling had a dispute with the hole at the gravitational anomaly. In fact, the two big guys, the founder and the seeker, were also in a dispute with him. They were full of curiosity about this new phenomenon, and for this reason, they kept urging poor Jiao to quickly create a nanoscale detection robot to enter the hole in the void for exploration. Jiao's current computing power was busy building a survivor base, but he was forced to do such a thing. Even Nanling couldn't stand it. He said, "Mr. Founder, why don't you find another place to conduct experiments yourself? If you want to conduct experiments anyway, it's good to find more experimental samples." The seeker answered for him, "Because we haven't found such holes in other places." It may be the special nature of this place, or we can't find it. Nanling was quite surprised, which he didn't expect. At this time, Geo said, "It's okay, I will be able to settle everyone soon, and then everyone can help together. After all, they are all excellent researchers." After hearing this, the founder and the seeker nodded, thinking that Geo's statement was correct. Nanling was still trying to exploit his mind. But this time he was much more careful, keeping his consciousness in his body and never exploring it easily. His mind tried to explore through this small hole, but the next moment it crashed again. He only felt that he had come into contact with an infinitely wide world, and his mind could not measure its scale at all. At the same time, infinite information poured into Nanling's consciousness, making his temporary consciousness unable to hold on, and his mental power was rapidly consumed. But the next moment, his consciousness returned to his body. Because his mental power was consumed, his star spirit weapon was like a rootless duckweed, floating out of controlling the void of the universe. Of course, he would not worry about this aspect. After all, his star spirit weapon with armor could be recycled. Nanling lay back again, and he didn't know how many times he had done this. Nanling was helpless about this kind of thing, and the exploration of the gravitational anomaly was more difficult than he imagined. Perhaps just like hyperspace, there was too much and too complicated information there, and receiving this information exhausted his strength. After a good rest, Nanling returned to the gravitational anomaly point and saw Geo operating a special detection device to detect the whole of the gravitational anomaly. He made a worm that was the size of a pinhole, just enough to drill through the hole. Its body was very long. After all, many precision components needed to be accommodated. This machine worm needed to accommodate enough detection components to observe the world behind the hole. This kind of data collection was very effective. At least there was corresponding data for the detector. Geo and the two bosses were busy happily. Nanling thought it would be better to let them busy first. He was more concerned about how far the intelligent machine crisis in UU had developed. It was a pity that this place had to remain completely silent with the outside world to avoid the pursuit of Tian, otherwise Nanling would definitely be surfing the internet now. Fortunately, the seeker saw his boredom and simply left him a drawing called Quantum Channel. Nanling only took a glance and understood what it was used for. It directly connected with the transceiver far away in another direction by quantum resonance, so that it could communicate directly with the transceiver as the base point. This actually has many similarities with the consciousness transmission technology. Nanling even thought that he should be able to figure it out if he gave himself some time. This is nonsense. He only knows the technology in this area but not the reason. In this case, how can he draw inferences from one instance to another? I'm afraid that he will have to experiment for a long time with trepidation for any change. If he doesn't want to go on the path of cultivation, at least he has a complete set of theoretical support until the Jindan stage. In this case, his inferences from one instance to another will be much bolder. This is just a very small touch, but it is very inspiring to Nanling. He realized that he is only good at cultivation after all, and he really doesn't have much talent in technology. Think about the 3-element system he has made. It can only be realized with the help of Mo, and it is essentially a downgrade in terms of technology. It just looks stronger because of the improvement brought by the technology. However, if he can use higher technology to match the concept of 3-element, then the 3-element system will probably be stronger, right? Nanling had a clearer understanding of himself when he thought of this. He decided not to think about technology anymore, and let professionals do the analysis. He quickly installed the quantum channel and found a coordinate to connect to it. The coordinate was actually a spaceship where the seeker was located. The seeker could connect to the entire human star network through that spaceship. Nanling was like opening a small port next to it, allowing him to share this convenience. He first checked the situation in UU. However, UU's network had been completely captured by Tian, so he could not directly perceive it. So he could only contact his own mother and ask, "Mom, what's the situation in UU?" Madame Rose replied, "I can't manage a place as far away as UU. I know that the situation in Fenno is not good. Not only do we have to deal with the robots that are causing chaos, but there are also traces of the nether locusts reported from time to time in the marginal areas. It's not an exaggeration to say that we are in a state of panic." Nanling said in surprise, "How can Tuntian invade the network of Fenno across such a long distance? This is through the network port, right?" Madame Rose said, "It's the smart virus. Tuntian sent the smart virus to this side before the idiots in Fenno reacted. More and more AIS are starting to rebel." Nanling asked, "What about other places?" Madame Rose said, "The network in Fenno is a mess now. I can't know exactly what's going on in other places, but it won't be any better." Nanling said politely, and noticing that Madame Rose was really in a state of panic, he could only sigh and end the communication. Then he immediately connected the communication with the Fanmoling building in the Star Special Zone. Fanmoling's butler Cow answered the call and started to complain. "Boss Nanlin, you have to think of a solution. The Federation is in complete chaos now." Nanling asked. "Is it because of the smart virus targeting AI?" Cow said. "Yes, the Parliament has put pressure on us several times and we need to come up with a solution immediately." Nanling thought for a while and then said, "Okay, wait a moment, I will come here to solve this matter myself." He remembered the consciousness transmission device he left in the Fanmoling building, and thought that he might be able to directly descend to Fanmoling to solve these troubles. Anyway, there is nothing for him to do here for the time being. Chapter 394 I don't have time. Nanling's consciousness descended on Fanmolin, floating like a ghost, without any sense of substance. However, Nanling soon used some special effects technology to make himself look like a real person, and then found Cow and said, "Now, what is the situation of the entire Star Federation?" Cow said, "I heard that all the major star regions are in chaos, and the most serious one is the Aja family, because their high-end military force is not enough, and they rely too much on the intelligent network, so that's miserable. The situation of the other few is not bad. Although they are also in the midst of war, because their high-end military force is strong enough, they can forcibly shut down the network and make those AIS infected with the smart virus fight each other and cannot connect." Nanling nodded after listening. It was a good thing that the two sides were still in a stalemate. He now understood the ideas of those big guys, that is, to use this not-so-serious intelligent machine crisis to completely force out the potential of human civilization in another direction. In fact, many things that the big guys did not say clearly, Nanling himself had already guessed. First of all, the Dark Locust has always been the imaginary enemy of the big guys. The hidden core of the Galaxy Fairy Guest and the actual combat test subjects of the Mind Weapon can all see this. Nanling also thought so based on his understanding of the Dark Locusts. Not to mention that the Dark Locusts have now declined, but once the King of the Dark Locusts returns, no one knows what the scene will be like. Anyway, when Nanling knew that all the administrative planets known now were taken from the mouths of the Dark Locusts, he regarded it as the biggest threat. But the threat of the Dark Locusts is only superficial, and the real trouble comes from the behind-the-scenes that has closed off the Milky Way. The emotional side of Nanling's heart naturally disagrees with the big guys who provoked the intelligent machine crisis, but the rational side can accept this method for the oppression brought by these hidden dangers. A stable life does make human civilization seem to have developed to a prosperous stage, but 2 comfortable days have also brought human civilization to a bottleneck. If it is just like this, how can such a human civilization survive the expected crisis? All those who know the inside story, including Nanlin, understand that the current human race still needs a big breakthrough, but how can such a breakthrough come? Nanling himself has no idea, and the big guys chose the intelligent machine crisis and chose war. Nanling felt that he had no room to object to this. At least the big guys were really practicing their own ideas and trying to push human society to change from the stagnant water. At this time, all the star regions of the Federation were more or less affected by the crisis of the intelligent machines. It can be said that there were constant wars. However, relatively speaking, the situation in the Star Special Zone was the best, because the Star Special Zone had experienced a riot by Xi, and the defense in this regard was very well prepared. After introducing the simple situation, Cow said again, "The Parliament asked us to come up with a solution tomorrow. Boss, what should I do?" Nanling pondered for a moment and said, "Tell me the time, I will attend this meeting in person tomorrow." Cow was a little surprised and a little excited. He was quite curious about how his boss would deal with the current incident. Nanling also began to think about the solution. The next day, he came to consciousness on time. The meeting room of the Parliament was in a mess, and there were even vacancies for members. It can be imagined what kind of life these members have been living in these days. There were originally 73 members, but now only 65 people are here, and the remaining absentees have not been replaced for a while. As for why he needed to be replaced, the main reason was that these people had been playing too crazy recently, and they were used to using physical force to eliminate their opponents to solve problems. At this questioning meeting, everyone's attitude towards Nanling was not so good. When Nanling hadn't said anything, they had already been talking about various accusations, as if they thought that the current intelligent machine crisis was all due to Fan Oling's incompetence. Nanling couldn't help but sneer in his heart. He wanted to say something, but this time he was quiet and waited for these people to finish making a fuss. It was not until the speaker saw that the situation was almost over that he knocked on the table and said, "Everyone, please be quiet. Let the person involved speak." He looked at Nanling and said, "Mr. Nanlin, one of the 3 major shareholders of Fanolin Company, is here. I think it will be more convincing for him to explain the situation." Nanling did not stand up to thank for the opportunity to speak like other speakers. He folded his hands in front of him, with his lower and upper lips clasped on his folded index fingers, making it difficult to see the lower half of his face. Such disrespectful attitude naturally aroused the anger of some people, but Nanling said calmly before those people got angry, "There is still 1 hour." Everyone was surprised, and the speaker asked, "What do you mean by 1 hour?" Nanling said, "I have 1 hour left to play with you here, so let's make all the decisions we need to make before that." Everyone felt greatly humiliated. Is this what you call playing with them? In fact, when everyone was angry, the rotating speaker of the Accord family took the lead in attacking. "Do you think the Supreme Council of the Star Federation is a child's game?" Nanling laughed and said, "There are still 58 minutes left. Do you want to continue wasting your time on these meaningless things, or listen to me talk about the cause of this intelligent crisis first?" The speaker was stunned. He looked at the determined Nanlin, and then thought of the strong man behind Fanolin. The rotating speaker from the Accord family knew very well how to respect the strong, so he said, "Then please let Mr. Nanling explain the whole story." Nanling did not hesitate at all, and directly projected the situation of the wisdom realm that Li Ji had collected before. When everyone was looking at the overwhelming machine capturing or cleaning up all humans, he said calmly, "This is what happened in Yu more than half a month ago. Yu, which is 20,000 light years away from us, has now been completely occupied by self-aware intelligent machines. The resistance forces exist sporadically, but I don't know when they will be completely wiped out. You should feel lucky that the super-intelligent Tian, who destroyed Yu, has not really extended his tentacles to this side. You have to face only the intelligent virus." Nanling said while showing the situation of various places facing the intelligent machine crisis, which scared these congressmen so much that their faces turned pale and they started to talk nonsense. Nanling said with a smile, "Look, if you must blame us for this big trouble facing all mankind, then we Fanolin are really flattered." The speaker was obviously embarrassed about this matter, but the best thing about being able to sit in this position is to change the subject. He knocked on the table and said, "It's meaningless to say all this now. The key is how we should respond. Since Mr. Nan knows the causes and consequences of this disaster very well, is there any way to deal with it?" Nanling nodded and said, "To achieve this, the modular transformation of the network in our star special zone is of utmost importance. Because it is impossible to resist the invasion of that kind of existence, we can only make the network more closed, reduce the degree of intelligence, and increase human participation in affairs." "Only in this way?" the speaker asked. "Can we withstand it in this way?" Nanling shook his head. "Only in this way can we survive the first wave, and then we can consider further transforming our civilization so that it can survive the crisis of intelligent machines. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novel, as there you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels." Chapter 395. Getting along in a comfortable way. Nanling said a lot, then looked at the time and said, "It's almost time. I have wasted too much time here. My main body is on the way to the wind region. The problems encountered in the wind region are more serious than yours." He smiled and said, and was about to leave. The speaker hurriedly stopped him and said, "Mr. Nan, are you going to give up the Federation?" Nanling shook his head and said, "Don't say that. The Federation will not perish. After all, the Federation has an ancient guardian who has been secretly protecting the development of civilization here." The speaker was at a loss. In fact, everyone present was at a loss. Nanling chuckled and said, "That's right. You have been protected all the time but you know nothing about it. It's really ignorant happiness. Forget it. I will give you a final suggestion. I left an emergency plan No. 11 inches the Fanolin building. Once the situation becomes irreversible, you can decide whether to activate this plan. And you have also experienced the effect of this plan, when the network was paralyzed a while ago." Everyone whispered to each other, and one by one said that this was too exaggerated and there was no need to do that. Nanling didn't care what they thought, and then he said the second suggestion. If the entire Federation is going to fall, you can choose to went to the Ghost Sea for the continuation of civilization. The speaker thought it was reliable when he heard this, and he asked, do you want us to make peace with the biochemical people in the Ghost Sea, and then use the innate geography of the Ghost Sea to defend the Ghost Fortress, and then plan a counterattack? Nanling said, no, we should seek the protection of the ancient power in the Ghost Sea. After all, he has protected the Star Federation for tens of thousands of years. I believe he will not refuse you if you ask for help. The speaker was at a loss, and everyone was at a loss, and then it seemed as if they had heard a funny joke. Someone said, Mr. Nanling, if you really have nothing to say, you don't have to say such ridiculous things. Nanling glanced at him, and then his figure disappeared like a phantom. At the Parliament, everyone was at a loss for a while, and then their eyes were focused on Cao. Cao smiled helplessly, and then said, as Boss Nanling said before, he is on his way to Fennu to solve the problem there, but don't worry, at least the network reconstruction plan of Fabxing Special Zone has been prepared. You can start voting after reading it. But someone was unwilling to let it go and asked, what kind of technology is this that can make people feel the same as real people? It seems that they're envious of this technology. Cao was stunned for a moment, and then said helplessly, if you really want to know, you can go back and ask your own Yuning elders, they should know it. This answer is really not what Cao wanted to say, but it was taught by Nanling. And as soon as this answer came out, Nanling's position was sublimated to a position that completely surpassed everyone present. Of course, with Nanling's own talent and what he was going through, this kind of praise is also justified. The whole venue suddenly fell silent, and it was the rotating speaker of the Yaji family who switched first, and then said, now, let's discuss whether to carry out the transformation according to the plan provided by Mr. Nan. The Parliament opened again without vitality. Cao finished the meeting with these officials in a boring way, and then returned to the Funlim building with a lot on his mind. However, when he pushed open the door of the top-floor office, he unexpectedly saw Nanling waiting for him there. Boss, I thought you had left. Nanling said, the main body is still in hyperspace, and the other side is busy with scientific research. I can't help much for the time being, so I will stay here for a while. Cao's face was a little stiff, and then he bowed and said, with you here, I can also breathe a sigh of relief. This is the truth. After all, with Nanling's decision, Cao can indeed relax a lot in the current environment. However, Nanling's first sentence after seeing Cao made Cao shudder all over. He said, you don't have to have any psychological burden. You can tell the ancient domain about everything here. You can even mention it. I still have the thing that paralyzed the network of Chuxing last time, and it is a more powerful version. Nanling can even barely move his body in the shallow hyperspace, so he naturally has a lot of hyperspace information. Moreover, he found that there was some complex information in his mind from the gravitational anomaly. Those were information that the current detectors could not detect, and naturally could not be understood by the current data analysis. Nanling mixed these two pieces of information together, which was enough to make any intelligent system burst with this stream of junk information. Cao said nervously, Boss, I don't know what you are talking about. Nanling said calmly, you don't have to worry, we all know that since it was concubine Yu King who brought you here, you were naturally inseparable from her branch. We use you because we recognize your talent and are not afraid that you will pass on information to the other side. Cao sighed when he heard this. He was really convinced by Nanling. If ordinary people encounter such a thing, even if they don't find a reason to kill him or send him away, they will at least put him in a corner to sit on the bench. How can you entrust him with such an important task right away? The key is that this kind of entrustment really makes Cao feel like a scholar will die for his confidant, so he has been very entangled. He was sent to watch Fanny, and he knew it very well. Of course, he had evidence in the ancient domain. Now that Nanling had exposed this matter, Cao felt a little embarrassed. But in his heart, he felt relieved and grateful. He suddenly understood how he should deal with his identity and mission. Nanling had already made it very clear to him that they could satisfy each other without hurting each other. He could still pass on information to the ancient domain, but it didn't matter as long as the information was considered by Nanling to be passed on. Cao interpreted Nanling's meaning and felt only gratitude. Nanling waved his hand and said, go quickly, you can even reveal my plan for the transformation of the network module of the Starry Special Zone. After all, I also hope that their losses can be smaller. Cao went gratefully. He could imagine what kind of reward he would get if he passed this information back. His family in the ancient domain should be better off, right? Nanling smiled and watched Cal leave, and he suddenly felt a little bored. There is really nothing interesting here in the Starry Special Zone. If the intelligent machine crisis really breaks out on a large scale, Nanling is not even sure whether the credit currency of Linkzhu points, which is linked to something unknown, can still be used. As for the power, what a joke, the Federation is about to fall apart. How much protection can this kind of power provide them? Moreover, at the moment when they have already embraced the thighs of the Great One, Nanling really looks down on these mundane forces. So the only important thing now is to obtain technology as much as possible. Whether it is military or civilian technology, it will be very important in the next era. However, just when Nanling began to buy various technologies, his expression suddenly changed, and he found that another powerful wall had descended on the Funlim building. Chapter 396. Talking about the regret. The person who appeared in front of Nanling was Gichen. Unexpectedly, he also completed the consciousness transmission technology and his consciousness descended here. The two consciousness-descended bodies looked at each other, feeling a little absurd. Gichen asked first. "Where did you go again?" Nanling said. "We are on the way to Fenyu. We received a commission and were about to go there to take a look." Gichen sighed helplessly. "I knew that guy couldn't sit still again." As expected of his biological father, he immediately thought of the root of the problem. He then asked, "So have you explained everything here?" Nanling said, "Don't worry, Uncle Gu, everything here is handed over to Cao. He is a very capable butler." After he said this, Gichen snorted coldly and said, "I don't think so. Maybe he has the ability, but he may not be really loyal to his job." Nanling knew what he was referring to as soon as he heard it. He smiled and said, "Uncle Gi seems to have a very high status in the Gi family recently. He knew the news I leaked so quickly." Gichen suddenly realized, did Cao reveal the news deliberately? Nanling nodded and said, "Instead of letting him suffer from inner torment and then reveal it on his own initiative, I might as well tell him directly what to say. We have never treated him unfairly. Next time he will know what to say and what not to say." Gichen re-examined Nanling after hearing this. He said with some amazement, "I didn't expect that you have this kind of skill to control people, but I think you should still be on guard." Nanling said, "Okay, I understand." He didn't argue, because he knew that Gichen gave him a kind reminder, not because he wanted to hear him argue. Just when he thought there would be nothing to say next, Gichen suddenly remembered something and said, "It just so happens that we are meeting here in this way today. Why don't I share my nascent soul insights with you? After all, these insights must be given to Fanny, and if I give them directly, I doubt how much she can understand." This sentence revealed the difficulty of this old father. He wanted to teach his daughter the best things, but the problem is that Fanny is born with a rebellious nature, and she is afraid that she will do the opposite of what Gichen says. In this case, he can only teach these insights to Nanling first, let Nanling eat them first, digest them, and then spit them out to teach Fanny. Although the description is a bit strange, it is the truth. Nanling's eyes were bright with anticipation, and he agreed without hesitation. This is what he has been looking forward to. Gichen did not hold back, and told all his insights and gains from his Jindan practice to the nascent soul breakthrough. The cultivation in the previous Jindan realm is similar to what Nanling knows, which is to constantly refine the spirit A to make it substantial. However, the inspiration that Gichen gave Nanling is that after refining the spirit array, you can actually continue to refine the spiritual power, which can make the spiritual power have a stronger ability to interfere with reality, which is actually the strength of the spiritual power. In addition, these refined spirit arrays can fix a spiritual power attribute or a spiritual power concept, so that spells can be used more conveniently, quickly and efficiently. The inspiration that Gichen brought to Nanling is mainly based on pragmatism, which is still in the category of art. But to be honest, Nanling really found the meaning of different paths leading to the same destination by raising the art to the limit. Because he himself is also thinking about how to form his nascent soul, and feels that perhaps he should integrate his own understanding, practice, and beliefs into the process of nurturing the nascent soul, which can be regarded as a kind of Tao fruit. The art of this era is actually doing the same thing, that is, to solidify the essence of what he has learned with the spirit array. 10 spirit arrays are 10 opportunities for self-screening and setting. The 10 spirit formations that carry concepts and wills are equivalent to writing one's own Tao into the golden elixir. However, this method seems too mechanical and rigid to Nanling, although it may really be effective. It is really full of the style of this era, and even cultivation seems to be writing code. However, according to Nanling's understanding, this approach should be particular. He asked, Uncle Gu, should the spiritual power attributes and concepts solidified in this spiritual formation be the things that cultivators of our generation are best at? Gye-Chen said, it can also be something you are not good at, and you can use it to make up for your own shortcomings. Nanling asked again, then Uncle Gu, does your spiritual formation have any part that can be used to make up for your own shortcomings? Gye-Chen said proudly, there is nothing I am not good at, so naturally there is no need to consider it from this aspect. Nanling pondered for a moment, then said, this may be the key. Gye-Chen was surprised, then he was moved and said, you mean, the spiritual formation cannot solidify the spiritual power attributes that you are not good at? Nanling said, it is possible, but I'm not sure. This requires big data analysis, but is there such big data? In fact, Nanling has some theoretical basis, but if you are not sure about this kind of thing, you can't talk about it. Gye-Chen said. But I think it makes sense. Remember to remind the two girls that the spiritual power solidified by the spiritual formation must be in the direction they are good at. Nanling smiled when he heard this. He said, with their talents, they should not have any worries about this aspect like Uncle Gu. In fact, talented people like you can be willful. If you are not good at something, you don't have to think about this aspect. Gye-Chen sighed and said, but how many people in this world can study the essence like you? This is a very useful topic. I will let the people around me pay attention to this aspect. Just treat it as the first set of experimental data. Gye-Chen is worthy at being valued by the big guys behind the scenes like the Seeker. At least this way of thinking that is willing to accept new things is very good. Nanling can understand the big guy's emphasis on Gye-Chen. This young and potential nascent soul often represents the future possibilities of the way of cultivation. Even if the path of cultivation is blocked, another path of development can be found. After Gye-Chen shared his experience of breaking through the nascent soul, Nanling also began to share his experience in the golden core stage, especially the theory of the harmony of the spirit, energy and spirit in the golden core. This amazed Gye-Chen, and at the same time he felt that he had learned something by analogy. He said, speaking of which, I was able to successfully break through the nascent soul, to a large extent, because I listened to your inspiration before, and deliberately strengthened the refinement of my body's essence and energy, so that the power in the golden core tended to be balanced. Both parties confirmed and gained something. Gye-Chen was a nascent soul master after all, and he then smiled bitterly and said, according to your theory, I'm afraid that my nascent soul is a congenital disability, which is really despairing. Nanling was surprised. Gye-Chen sighed and said, I also realized it late. No wonder I always felt that my nascent soul seemed to have some shortcomings, but I didn't know how to make up for it. Now I know. Although I made some adjustments under your influence during the golden core stage, these adjustments are not enough after all. I have felt that if I can't make up for these shortcomings, my nascent soul journey will probably come to an end soon. Nanling was surprised. He didn't expect Gye-Chen to have such feelings. But he thought it was normal. After all, he was a person who had reached a certain height. But even Nanling felt sorry for Gye-Chen. It would be a pity if such a good talent could only stop because of the insufficient foundation of the nascent soul. Chapter 397 Exploration Plan. Nanling and Gye-Chen had a very good exchange, and both sides gained a lot. If it weren't for the difference in seniority, Nanling felt that he could call Gye-Chen Doya. However, after Gye-Chen realized that his nascent soul was defective, his mood has been not very good. He said depressedly, I guess this is how my life will be. At most, I can find a way to live forever in another way as you said. Nanling hurriedly comforted him and said, Uncle Gu, don't be so depressed. Maybe there is a way to remedy it. Gye-Chen seemed to have figured it out. He said, fortunately, Fan and I should not have such a defect when she is with you. It is really lucky for her to know you. You don't have to worry about me. Now we also need me to stand up and escort everyone. Escorting everyone has become Gye-Chen's current idea. Nanling admired him very much, but he couldn't say anything to comfort him now. After all, although he did have some ideas, they were all unconfirmed guesses. Instead of talking about those things now to increase Gye-Chen's hope, it would be better for him to perfect his theoretical cognition first. However, Nanling asked curiously, Uncle Gu, we have figured out the cultivation of the Jinnan stage, so what about the cultivation of the Yuning stage? Gye-Chen showed a bitter expression and said, unfortunately, I have not found anything about the cultivation of the Yuning stage so far, and everyone is still groping. I really admire those ancestors who created the way of cultivation in ancient times. How did they create a road in just a few thousand years of history? We have spent tens of thousands of years following the map and only groping in the Yuning stage. Nanling felt that this was right. After all, if the Yuning stage really has a complete and systematic way of cultivation like before, it means that the theory of cultivation at this stage has been perfected, and someone should be able to truly break through to the next realm. However, Gichen still told him some of the cultivation status of the Yuning stage. The Yuning stage should cultivate the Yuning. This is Gichen's cognition, and it is also that cognition of most of the current Yuning practitioners. They used the nascent soul as a new carrier, and continue to absorb and refine spiritual power, making the nascent soul as a carrier an increasingly condensed energy body. To be honest, this sounds like a serious way to improve, but Nanling felt that this method also took the route of leaving the original physical body. Nanling felt that this might be a way, but the result of this way might not necessarily meet the expectations of the seekers and casters. The discussion of the duo ended after all, mainly because Nanling's mental power could not maintain such a long period of consciousness transmission. Gichen was in a very good state, but he could only say goodbye. In general, because of this discussion of the duo, Nanling really had the qualifications to have an equal dialogue in front of Gichen. They now felt like friends. Time passed, and Nanling still presided over the overall situation in the Star Special Zone, and from time to time went to Jia to see their research on the abnormal gravity hole. In general, the research progress was very slow. But there are some things that can be confirmed, that is, some information in the hole in the void can be consistent with hyperspace. This is undoubtedly related to the mystery of space, but they dare not take it out for further exploration. Because they are afraid that the UU ruled by Tian Swallow will find their traces, and then this survivor base will be finished. Just when they were at a loss, Nanling suddenly thought of a good idea. I suggest sending a microtransmitter through it. The seeker made a suggestion. The caster shook his head and said, "Do you think this space hole is connected to other places? I know you have been looking for a way to break through the distance of space, but it is too risky to try it now. The signal of the transmitter can be received by anyone. If Tian Swallow also receives this signal and finds clues, it can use the same method to locate here. In addition, this is just a bad result after your conjecture is established. It is also possible that nothing will happen, and this transmitter will be lost in the unknown space." The seeker asked, "Do you think there is another universe behind this hole?" The caster said, "I don't really think so, it's just a guess." The two great men began to argue about their conjectures, and they were unwilling to give up until they came to a conclusion. Finally, for some unknown reason, the seeker of knowledge suddenly handed the decision to Nanling and said, "Nanling, tell me what you think." Nanling was depressed. Why did these two people take him along when they were arguing? But since they had asked, he had to answer. He hesitated for a moment, then pondered, "In fact, I think the founder is not against the seeker of knowledge's conjecture, but he is unwilling to take risks because he is worried about the safety of the survivor base. On this point, I agree with the founder of knowledge." The founder was stunned for a moment. He thought Nanling would support the seeker of knowledge. But when the seeker of knowledge heard what Nanling said, he was not angry. Because even though Nanling opposed this approach, he also agreed with the seeker of knowledge's conjecture. Nanling was trying to please both sides. But if he wanted to please both sides, he had to come up with a solution, otherwise, even if it was good now, it would inevitably offend both sides later. So Nanling didn't finish his words, he continued. "I do have a suggestion, which can not only verify your guess, the seeker, but also ensure that it is concealed and will not be discovered by the devourer." Upon hearing this, the caster said happily, "If there is such a way, I will naturally agree." The seeker also hurriedly asked, "What is the way?" Nanling said, "Make a small detector that can pass through the hole, let it pass through the hole offline and come back, and then we can read its reconnaissance records." The seeker said, "The problem is, how can we make the offline device return?" Nanling smiled and said, "Then we have to make another device that can carry my consciousness on this detector, and I can attach my consciousness to it to control the detector to go back and forth." The seeker and the caster looked at each other, and suddenly realized that this plan was really feasible. They did not ask about the risks that Nanling would take by doing this. After all, it is no secret that Nanling can quickly recover in his body even if his consciousness collapses outside his body. Even if Nanling has to pay a certain price for this, they are really focused on this experiment now. The caster was the first to speak up. "Technically there is no problem. I can build a mind-armed neural branch into it." The seeker also said, "It would be great if it can be realized. I'm not sure what kind of compensation you need. You can choose any of my technology inventory at the time." It seems that the Seeker knows Nanling very well. This is the right thing to do. How can you do things without getting paid? Chapter 398 Wormhole. Those great men cherished their lives more than Nanling imagined. In fact, when Nanling made this suggestion, he thought that the two big men who were used to using consciousness transmission devices might have better suggestions, rather than using their own consciousness like he did. But he was disappointed. In the end, he got the most advanced communication technology from the Seeker of Knowledge, and the more advanced space-folding technology from the Caster. These were all selected by Nanling according to his own needs, and he received the rewards directly. The two big men were very straightforward in giving rewards. The uniqueness of these two rewards is that the communication technology can support Nanling to directly contact the outside world in hyperspace. Although it can be transferred by consciousness projection now, this is indeed a technology he needs. The space-folding technology of the Caster is even more powerful. The current folding warehouse is a low-level application version of this technology, and the complete technology can directly create hundreds of times more spacious extra space in the space of a material carrier, the kind that can store living things. This is not like the folding cargo box, where the folding space is imperfect and does not have any life-sustaining function. Nanling was very satisfied with these two technologies. After using the Star Spirit Armor's brain to quickly load these technologies and bring them back to his body with his consciousness, Nanling received his reward and it was time to do his work. A worm-shaped detector was made. This detector itself did not have any networking function, and all operations could only accept instructions from the inside. This was a completely wrong design in theory, but when this one was made by attaching to a thick nerve branch, everything became possible. Nanling's consciousness descended on this nerve branch, and he naturally felt crowded, narrow, and restrained. But there is no doubt that this nerve branch can really bear his consciousness. Of course, he must be careful, otherwise it will collapse at any time. At this time, Geo was operating a large experimental flying robot, and carefully placed the mechanical one loaded with Nanling's consciousness in front of the space hole. Nanling did not hesitate at all, and transmitted a thought, and the worm drilled into the hole at once. During this process, Nanling did not dare to explore in any way of his own, but only used the detector loaded by the worm itself to receive information. That's right, this worm did not even load any technology side memory. It directly used this nerve branch as a memory, and it could even be said that it stored Nanling's consciousness to store information. At that moment, Nanling felt that countless images were transmitted back from the worm's detector, which made him feel dizzy. What he cared more about was the touch of sliding quickly in a narrow channel transmitted from the nerve tree tip. But before Nanling could react, he felt another round hole appear in the dark space in front of him. When his worm head drilled out of it, he realized that he had returned to the universe in the conventional sense. Just this discovery made him know that the Seeker's conjecture was correct. This hole could really lead to other places, and now all he had to do was to locate this exit hole. Nanling couldn't help but feel excited, which meant that the possibility of space travel had been verified. Moreover, wasn't this the wormhole he had always thought about? The worm's detector quickly recorded the gravitational information of this place. Although the gravity positioning in deep space is classical, it will never be outdated. Nanling's consciousness also recorded this information through the worm's detector. It can be said that even if the worm cannot go back now, it doesn't matter. Nanling's consciousness is enough to bring back the key data. However, he still manipulated the worm to drill back. Because he had never done such a thing before, he was still a little uncomfortable at first. But when he re-entered the wormhole, an accident happened. He felt an extremely strong squeezing feeling coming from all directions, and his worm carrier was squeezed and broken at once. The neural branches in the worm were also broken, and Nanling's consciousness dissipated instantly. In the deep hyperspace, Nanling's body lying in his room was shaking constantly. His consciousness returned, and there was no loss, but the collapse of the neural branches as a carrier still made him tremble in a stress-like manner. For him, it was like experiencing his body being crushed again. But he soon regained his calm. He had consumed a lot of mental energy in the experience just now, and now he just felt very sleepy. So his consciousness quickly fell into a deep sleep. There was no other way. After all, his hyperspace communication equipment was not ready yet. Otherwise, he could have alerted the survivors at the base. After resting for 8 hours, Nanling felt that his mental strength had almost recovered, so he quickly transmitted his consciousness again. He was familiar with this process now. This consciousness went back and forth, and he was used to the feeling of exhaustion. When his consciousness was re-injected into the mental armament, the Founder and the Seeker of Knowledge came to him in different forms. The seeker of knowledge asked first. We failed. The founder was much more pragmatic. I need all the data you recorded. Nanling did not say anything and directly transmitted the data with his consciousness. The system in the entire laboratory immediately showed an orange alarm of imminent overload. The data recorded by Nanling's consciousness was not a little bit. He even recorded the feelings when he traveled through space. The part that occupied the most memory and computing power was the moment when the worm was squeezed and exploded. The data recorded by his consciousness at that moment almost paralyzed the system of this laboratory. At the same time, he said to the seeker, "No, we succeeded, but I had a little accident on the way back. There is indeed a passage behind the hole, but this passage is more dangerous than we thought. I was squeezed to pieces by this passage on the way back. It seems that if this kind of space passage is really to be used, corresponding technology is needed." The seeker was completely excited. What he wanted was this kind of harvest from exploring the unknown. His own path was greatly satisfied at this moment. He kept muttering excitedly, "That's it, that's right. I want to find all the space holes in the entire Milky Way and find corresponding entrances for them. By the way, I have to name them. This is an incredible new discovery." Seeing his excitement, Nanling had no intention of competing with him. It's just a title. There is no need to compete with the other party for the right to name it. Speaking of which, according to this naming standard, the seeker can completely name it as seeking knowledge as whole. Nanling refused when he thought of this. If the wormhole was named Nanling's hole in the future, he would feel terrible. Fortunately, the seeker did not use this naming rule. He simply thought about it and said, "We can only make mechanical worms to explore it now. In this case, why not call it a wormhole? It's simpler and easier to remember." Nanling was stunned for a moment, and felt that fate was really wonderful. In this era when space was blocked by abnormal phenomena, they only relied on the abnormal phenomena of clues to find this wormhole, but it ended up with the same name as the scientific conjecture of Nanling in that era. Chapter 399 Plastic Girlfriend. The information that Nanling brought back was beyond the imagination of the big guys, or in other words, beyond their cognition. Damn it, if I were me 40,000 years ago, I would have had an idea by now. The caster showed a look of annoyance. The shackles that had blocked human civilization for 100,000 years seemed to have hope of breaking through, but he was helpless. The caster's mood can be imagined. This is a very regrettable thing. As the caster, who may be the most outstanding inventor in human history, did not encounter this research direction at his peak. So his current state is really regrettable. Even though he can do whatever he wants in his original field, it is difficult for the caster to get any innovative clues in his research on space. This is a completely unfamiliar field for the current human civilization. This is a field that can truly break through the current living space and face a wider world, but sadly, the best researchers in human history can no longer make achievements in this new field. Cultivating talents in this field, from now on, at least there is a direction. The seeker of knowledge comforted. The caster said, "But I'm not sure if we have that time to wait for a generation. Okay, Jia, you and your colleagues have to work harder." In the end, this task fell on Jia. It's not that a big boss like the caster is useless. In fact, the caster's role is too great. No matter how Jia's subordinates want to study, as long as they come up with ideas, the caster can create targeted facilities. He just can't explore independently in a new field, but this doesn't mean that he can't make equipment according to requirements. On the contrary, such a caster is actually the best assistant. Jia said distressedly, "I have become a digital life, and I'm afraid my thinking will soon be restricted by those rules and regulations. I can only look to others." The seeker and the caster felt helpless when they heard this. Although these researchers are also elites who have been selected, they lack some independent and pioneering spirit. Originally, not everyone among humans has that kind of creativity. But now there is nothing we can do, so we can only do this for the time being. Nanling thought of something and said, "Now the Star Federation is in chaos. I will let my company pay attention to recruiting scientific researchers from all walks of life." The seeker said happily, "I will let Fox help you. All his resources can be used by you." Nanling said indifferently, "No need. Mr. Fox has his own operating system. We can do it according to our own ideas and communicate and summarize regularly. Although this will cause a waste of resources, it can also be studied from different directions, and there will always be extra gains." The caster agreed and said, "That's right. We should do this with as much surplus resources as possible. It is too important." The three parties decided to cooperate. The Seeker has his own power, and the caster's power is temporarily based on this survivor base. Nanling is based on Fanolin, but there is no chance to really start research. Nanlin, as a Jindan cultivator, can actually be one of the three parties. This is not only because he was actually the first to observe the wormhole, but also because all major breakthroughs so far have been completed with his participation. In the eyes of these great people, Nanling has the qualifications to talk to them on an equal footing. What they value is not the life level or powerful strength. The most important thing in their eyes is wisdom. Nanling is a wise person. At least they have seen countless possibilities in Nanlin, and each of these possibilities is full of temptation for them. Things have been temporarily settled. The survivor base will continue to expand, and data analysis will be carried out at another experimental base of the caster. The followers of the Seekers of Knowledge, together with Fanolin, began to recruit scientific researchers in human society, mainly physicists. And it is precisely because of the war that Fanolin, which started as a numb's company, has also washed in a wave of great development. Because Fanolin's weapon concept is ahead of the times, their production cost is lower, but there are certain requirements for use. However, in the current crisis of intelligent machines, humans need to rely on the way of cultivation to improve their strength. These conceptual weapons of Fanolin are so perfectly in line with the current development needs of humans. Wind, thunder, fire, and ice, these four attributes are enough to cover the vast majority of users. After all, cultivators with earth or wood attributes are not only rare, but also not very suitable for the front battlefield. As for the golem-type cultivators, it was a pity. Nanling could not help them, not to mention that most of the cultivators in this department also lacked physical combat like Tai Long. In this way, Fanolin's capital flow was greatly expanded. But Nanling did not intend to expand the scale of the company. He just kept recruiting physicists and astrophysicists, and the excess funds were used to acquire various technologies. The intelligent machine crisis caused countless small businesses to face bankruptcy, and the turbulent times also made it impossible for many bosses to run their own industries. The technology that Nanling acquired came from them. No matter whether it is useful or not, he put it away first. When it is really needed, he can rely on these technologies to reshape an advanced civilization. Well, this is Nanling's preparation, but I hope it will never be used. In this way, another 3 months passed, and the experimental work at the survivor base was carried out in an orderly manner, and the Vuoxia finally ended its more than 4-month hyperspace voyage. I feel like I have had a long dream. Fan and I muttered tiredly the first time she got up. Mo's condition was not much better. She rubbed her forehead and said, "Yes, I always feel very awake and want to wake up, but I can't wake up." Nanling heard it and said, "This is because your soul has reached the critical point of awakening in the deep hyperspace. You just need to continue practicing for a while, and I believe you can wake up in the deep hyperspace." Li Ji was silent for a long time, and then she suddenly said, "No, what did you do while we were asleep?" Fanna subconsciously looked down at her collar. Well, it didn't seem to be torn open. Mo elbowed her in annoyance and said, "Sister Li Ji is right. Shonan has gained a lot of incredible things during this time." Nanling was already inputting information into the bridge of Vuoxia. The more Fanna looked, the wider her eyes widened. She said in astonishment, "During this time, you actually did so many things." Then she became jealous. Why can Nanling play so much, while she can only lie down and sleep? Especially after seeing the wormhole experiment conducted by Nanling and the two big guys, Seeker and Caster, she immediately said with great interest, "We will do this too." Mo reminded, "Don't forget our mission in the Wind region." Nanling helped. "That is not important, at least it is not important to the Seeker." Fanny nodded repeatedly. Mo looked at the two people unhappily and could only remind them again. "Fanny, don't forget Miss Fenyi's request for help." We received her request for help before we set off. This time, Nanling hadn't said anything yet, and Fanna had already said, "Then we are right so much earlier." "No hurry, we will go to her in 5 months. We will arrive earlier." Since she asked us for help, she should have calculated the advance time. Such irresponsible remarks of the usual Fanna style. Nanling agreed again. "Yes, Miss Fenyi should not have a big problem. We can authorize her the 3-element weapon system at a discount. With this weapon system, she can do it." Mo felt that Fenyi was really unfortunate to have such a best friend. Chapter 400 Great Strength Creates Miracles. The burning cloud had left hyperspace at the edge of the Wind region. On the one hand, it was because traces of the Dark Locust appeared on the Edge planet, and on the other hand, it was uncertain about the situation in the Wind region at this time, so it did not dare to rush in and get involved. This period of time is always too sensitive. As soon as they left hyperspace, Fanny couldn't wait to find a wormhole to play. She felt that the Seekers and Casters were too stubborn, and how could they compare to her cleverness? So at the edge of the Wind region, the Burning Cloud found a place where floating stones gathered. There were obvious signs of looters' activities here, but it should be just a temporary stop. The Burning Cloud was moored, and some minor modifications were carried out under the auspices of Liji. After all, the newly acquired hyperspace communication technology and space folding technology must be used. With the blueprints, Liji can do this alone, and there is no need for others to intervene. The others put on combat armor and loaded wingsuits, and flew outside to find the wormhole at the gravitational anomaly. Nanling thought he had to point it out himself, but he didn't expect that Fanny would rush over first. Just a moment later, her joyful voice came over the communication. "Found it, it's right here." He hurried over with Mo. There was indeed a small hole as thick as a finger. This wormhole is slightly larger than the one in the survivor's base, but this should not be the key for Fanny to find it all at once. Nanling felt that a conjecture could be confirmed. They were able to find the location of the wormhole so easily, which should be inseparable from the Divine Mind. Before this, both the Caster and the Seeker of Knowledge had attempted to discover the wormhole with equipment, but they all failed without exception. This is because the spatial energy reaction in the wormhole is an existence that cannot be observed by current technological equipment, but the fact that the equipment cannot observe it does not mean that the Divine Mind cannot observe it. The Divine Mind is the way for cultivators to observe and learn about this world. Nanling gradually realized the significance of this aspect. At this moment, Fanny said complacently, "Hey, that's all. What should we do now?" Seeing her like this, Nanling asked tentatively, "Use a detector to explore." Fanny nodded repeatedly and said, "Yes, use a detector to explore." Mo said expressionlessly, "Although such a small detector can be made, its performance is definitely far inferior to the mechanical one specially designed by the Foundry." Nanling confirmed, "Yes, so far mechanical worms are the most suitable equipment for exploration. If necessary, I can ask the Foundry for the design drawings." Mo said immediately, "But even if there are design drawings, the parts of such precision equipment may need to be manually processed by ourselves. Fanny, your refining and smelting abilities are of utmost importance." Fanny waved her hand and said, "I think they have done a lot of exploration in this area, and there is no need for us to do this meaningless repetition." Upon hearing that there would be labor activities again, Fanny immediately changed her mind. She said, "Let's see what tests the two bosses have done first." Fanny looked through the research materials, but unfortunately, she got bored after a while. So she said in her own way, "I was thinking, the bosses seem to have done many kinds of detection tests, and the only thing they haven't done is destructive experiments." Nanling's face suddenly changed, and he asked quickly, "Boss Fanny, don't be impulsive, this is too dangerous." Mo had no choice but to open all the defenses, because according to her understanding of her best friend and lady, when she said a suggestion so seriously, it meant that she had done it. Boom. There was a muffled sound in the space. In fact, there was no figure, but the sudden shock made everyone's body bones vibrate, which made the sound seem. Behind Fanny, a fire wheel had expanded, but the next moment, it shrank rapidly as if it was suppressed by something. Finally, the fire wheel revealed its original appearance, which was the wormhole. It's just that this wormhole is slightly larger than before. Nanling had already grabbed Fanny like a chicken, and stood in front of Mo on the left and right, making a full-scale defensive posture. Fortunately, the worst situation did not happen. The explosion disappeared silently, and nothing dangerous happened. Fanny was stunned for a while behind the two of them, and then smiled and said, "Look, there is no problem." Nanling did not say anything, but asked Liji, "Have you recorded the data from the explosion to the recovery just now?" Liji said, "It's all recorded. It should be very good material." Nanling nodded, and then carefully sensed the wormhole with his mind. How to say it, Fanny is worthy of her great luck. After the wormhole was blown up by her, under the rendering of the fire spirit power, at least a circle of gorgeous light and shadow can be seen faintly at the entrance of the wormhole. This is the space channel after being dyed. Under the rendered light and shadow of the fire spirit power, this space channel seems to be wriggling and opening and closing. Between opening and closing, it shrinks a little. The width that was blown out slowly shrank back to its original size. No, it was even narrower than the original width of one finger. Space, is it creeping? Nanling asked herself in surprise. Fanny was not too interested in the nature of this creeping. She thought of one thing and asked, if we can maintain the output of spiritual power, can we continue to expand this hole? This was her idea. Nanling nodded in agreement and said, you can give it a try. As soon as he finished speaking, he also started to work. However, unlike Fanny's violent flames, he tried to gather wind. He used wind spiritual power like a high-speed rotating spherical storm. Of course, this ball was very small at first, like a glass bead. He stuck this small bead into the mouth of the wormhole, and then continued to inject spiritual power to expand it. Facts have proved that Fanny's imagination is not wrong. It's just that the consumption is too great. To maintain this expansion state, the spiritual power and divine thoughts he consumed made him tremble with fear. But the reward that followed was that for the first time, they could look into the wormhole from outside and see some interesting things. The various detectors on the Zhuoxia were fluctuating, frantically recording all the data that could be detected at this time. The effect of turning on all the detectors on the Zhuoxia was much better than using mechanical worms to detect. After all, it was impossible for the small size of mechanical worms to carry so many detection devices, and the detection power was completely incomparable to that of the Zhuoxia. Nanling barely opened the hole to a diameter of 1 meter at this time, and found that it was already a lot of effort to simply maintain it. After gritting his teeth and holding on for another 2 minutes, he gave up. Of course, he did not feel discouraged because he had gained enough during this period. End of this chapter. Thank you very much for reaching the end. Don't forget to like. Looking for more exclusive content and immediate access? Subscribe to our Patreon. Remember, every like, subscription, or donation encourages us to continue. Thanks to everyone. See you in the next video.